Hello and welcome to the Poor Hammer Podcast, episode 71. I'm your host, Brad. This is my co-host, Eric.
How's it going?
This has been several weeks of us waiting around for all of the information to come out, and now it is finally time to celebrate. 10th edition is upon us. It is time for us to eat, drink, and be merry, and give atrocious hot takes and terrible opinions.
Yeah, the points finally just dropped, so it's hot takes time.
So without any further ado, let's get into this.
Sounds good.
All right, before we get into this and completely go off the deep end, let's talk about some basic rules for how we'll do the episode. And before all that, let's start off with some words of warning. Number 1. This episode is going to be very opposite of last week. This will be very unedited, unscripted, and we're probably going to be doing like the loosest, most bare bones editing job to get this one out the door early so that you guys can get it when it is hottest and most interesting. So thank the editor. This is still going to be a rush job, and forgive all the errors you find from this point on that made it in. Creaking chairs, airplane noises, whatever. Clicking on the keyboard, clicking on the mouse will happen a million times.
We gave you the warning, and I think that's like signing the TOS. Now we can do whatever.
And as a separate warning, if you're new to 40K and like clicking on this because you enjoyed our intro episode last week, do not take any of the negative things said here seriously. This edition looks incredibly fun.
Yes.
Every army looks like, if you enjoy it as an army, even if the rules aren't currently the hottest in their index, they will be fine. Don't worry about it. Enjoy yourself. It's going to be a wild ride. 6 months from now, nothing is going to be the same. If we talk about something being broken, it doesn't mean you have to go buy it right now. It's going to most likely be nerfed to oblivion by the time you end up building it, or we're just dead wrong.
Yeah, that's the other thing is like, this is hot takes. We haven't tested anything. We haven't really had enough time to fully digest what the interactions between certain things do.
And importantly, everyone else on the internet who is giving their opinions right now has not played a game of 10th. Yeah. They have no idea what's good, what's bad, what's undercosted, what's overcosted. We're all doing educated guesses right now.
So, huge grain of salt. But 10th edition does look fun. Just the core fundamentals, I'm excited.
This is going to be mostly positive. I'm going to go off the deep end with some rants of specific things, but I'm really excited.
I think in doing this, we're going to probably go with some basic general thoughts, and then like faction by faction, there's an army rule, detachment rule for the index, which has the rule, the stratagem, enhancements, and then we'll probably bring up a couple units from each, just general ideas of things that are interesting or how the army's kind of feeling. And I mean, that's at least the plan. We'll see what the hell happens.
And I'd like to wrap up each of the armies with like a general grade for the index, whatever scale we come up with.
All right. That should be interesting to see what we get on that.
I hope we start off with letter grades. In the middle, we're doing like good, bad, and ugly buckets. And by the end, we're trying to get out a tier list.
That sounds about right.
It depends if I crack open any more drinks I can't talk about because this part will be on YouTube too early.
So with that, general 10th edition ideas and thoughts.
I like about 80 to 90% of the changes.
Yeah.
I really, really, really like having indexes a lot.
I am a big fan of them as well.
I kind of really wish 9th had them.
I think the unit cards are really cool, and splitting out the weapon profile from the unit itself, I think that'll work out pretty well. I'm not sure yet about leadership, if it actually changes anything.
I think Battle Shock is my giant question of the edition. I was more down on it when it was first shown off. I think now that I've seen all the indexes, I'm very intrigued by it. I actually think losing your objective secured, or whatever we want to call it, the OC characteristic.
Yeah.
I think losing that is not the most important part of it. The most important part in most cases is going to be losing the ability to use stratagems on the unit.
Right.
And the fallback thing is another thing of like you have to take the desperate breakout or whatever.
Desperate escape, yeah. I think Battle Shock is interesting, but I'm not sure it actually matters for most times kind of thing. But I have some concerns that I'm just basing that off of how much leadership didn't matter.
Yes, and that's my problem too, is leadership never mattered because we all played around it.
Yeah.
Battle Shock seems very different though, because it triggers differently, and it has, in my opinion, more consequence, even though I know technically you could have something horrible happen with leadership. It almost never mattered.
Right. And there wasn't really any play around it kind of thing.
I will say if Battle Shock is worthless, several armies are far worse off, but I don't think that will be the case.
I'm at least interested to see. You know, it's one of those that, like, with the new cards, we've got leadership, and it might actually mean something now. So that would be cool. It does have the downside of how the test is taken, that your low roll miracle dice are less useful. Not that it really matters, but it's honestly, it's a lot cleaner. Now it's like, if you roll high, it's good. If you roll low, it's bad.
Yeah, it's fine. I think, like, as far as, like, negative things go that I'm not thrilled about or have suspicions about, I feel like certain indexes are going to run their course long before a codex comes. I worry about certain factions who are not in the first year, who are going to be living in very basic detachment choices.
I see what you're saying. Like, the actual army building process
is too overly simplified with the core detachment.
Yeah. Well, especially for some of these factions. That's definitely true.
Yeah. Okay. I'm very biased with Drukhari. Drukhari's looking pretty good. We'll get into it in detail on what's good and bad. But the detachment is, like, awful. It's real fucking bad. And I think every Drukhari player, no matter what brand of Drukhari you're in, you're not happy about it. Because it's essentially the fucking hold hands, all get along detachment. And right. It's like, I just want to run the part of the army I want to run. I don't want to be explicitly forced to try to run all three to maximize my detachment rule. Especially because, like, the less of it you run, not only does the detachment rule gets worse, your stratagems just flat out don't work, and your relics are your enhancements now. You get, like, one.
Yeah.
There are more than just Drukhari, but Drukhari is one where I think it'll feel great short term. It's going to feel rough long term.
It's one of those that, like, it'll be fine for a year and a half.
A year and a half's pushing it. If it was your only army, you'd be very bored by then.
Yeah. There's going to be some armies that it's going to be waiting for quite a while. And there's definitely going to be some that your creative building in lists are going to be limited. So, yeah, that's kind of annoying.
Indexes can't be full complexity of a codex, or they would just be the codex, which they should be, and everyone should have their rules for the whole edition so they can actually play the game together at the same pace, but that's a different problem.
One step at a time.
Indexes is still a step up. We're happy.
Right. The core rules having a bunch of new keywords. I like it.
I like them?
But it's confusing.
Okay, my problem with them isn't them right now. My problem with them is I was reading indexes twice because I got halfway through an index before I realized Assault changed when someone else was confused why I didn't like something.
Okay.
And, like, the way these got shown off to us was, like, in a vacuum, they said, look at this ability that this bolter has.
Right.
And that was, like, 4 or 5 weeks ago. It was, like, right when the edition was shown off. And it was, like, cool, keywords exist. But it was, like, you weren't really syncing them in. And then there was never a, like, indexes come out next week. Here's all the keywords so that you actually pay attention to them.
I think that's why I don't like it right now, is because there wasn't one of those. Here's a spreadsheet of all of the keywords, and here's what they do. Like, I had to create one of my own basic ones, and I'm not happy with it yet.
This is a general thing, but it's very fucking funny to me. On our Hot Takes for 10th edition, we were joking about, oh god, is 2 pages of rules enough? And we were like, well, it's enough if it's like 2 pages made by an engineer.
Yeah.
Not when GW takes an entire page to write 6 simple stratagems or spends an entire page on a piece of artwork.
Yes.
And then in the core rules, when you're going through the keywords, you would be like, oh, I want all the keywords in a nice table I can look at. Yeah, no, they're spelled out. There's like flavor text between the abilities to go like, the Astartes are so good at bullshitting that they're able to make their guns shoot twice sometimes.
I hate it.
And then it goes into sustained hits.
I like having the examples in there. That's cool.
The examples are fine. But then the biggest slap in the fucking face is in the middle of the keyword section. They take a break to do like a full page spread picture.
Yep.
And it's like, bitch, this is the part I need. Stop this shit. That goes up front with the stupid fucking art and lore shit.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, when I'm playing, I need this as a reference, not an art piece. So I would appreciate the reference.
Yes, I want an appendix. I want, here's your table of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like this big fluffy 4-page spread. We found out like certain abilities when they're only in certain phases are in different parts of the core rulebook. All sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. It's good. I am happy to see that they've decided to incorporate these keywords. So long as they don't cheat and make it so that blast is one thing, but in a different rule set, in a different codex, it means something different.
We kind of got a couple things like that. So there's like the fortification rule that like Space Marines got and Tyranids got, and they're a universal keyword that's only on that datasheet, on that ability. They do the same thing, but they're flavored differently, so they have different names. Then there's stuff in the Necron part, and I think Necrons was written dead first. I would put money on it because Necrons has some weird formatting issues that no other army had. That feels like this got written while they were finalizing the rule book for what indexes would look like, and no one went back and touched up this couple pages I noticed it on.
I mean, maybe. There were a few that I was like, this looks like not the final pass kind of thing.
But like, there's already the minor things. They're not big. They don't need to be fixed in many cases. There's a couple things of like, they had to keep repeating if something only has a starting strength of 1, it's under half strength for this rule if it has less than half its wounds remaining. And that should have just been in the core rules when discussing half strength. But they didn't put it there. I assume because it would make basic battle shock trigger that way. But it's on like every fucking ability. And now you're going to be like, oh, it's on every ability. That's fine.
Except for when it's not. Yeah. I noticed that same thing in Orks. There's the transport stuff. And they list out like these are what can be transported and stuff. And Gaz is a special case.
Yeah, because he shouldn't be able to get transported, so they make him cost a ton to transport so that you just put him alone.
Yeah, he's like 18 to transport or whatever. So every transport that could take him or has 18 or more could take him, and it's like, oh, gas costs this much to take. All the ones that are less than 18, don't talk about him. So he's just an infantry.
So a truck can run gas and a bunch of other stuff.
I can toss gas in a truck as rules written. It's obviously not intended.
He's supposed to need a battle wagon to move, yeah.
More counting of the troop count because everyone else that lists it is like gas costs this many spots and it's more than that dedicated transport or that transport has. So I get why it's not on there, but it's like things like that. It shows that this is definitely like one of those, like this is the first time they've done these major changes. Like there's going to be some of these, oh, we obviously intended it that way, but
that gets into what I consider a good thing, which is the Deathwatch elephant in the room, which happened earlier this week.
Right.
Deathwatch's index came out. It had a stratagem in it that was fucking hilariously broken, beyond belief. Literally 30 to 40 mortal wounds from a single 5-man shooting. And by 2 days later, the index had been updated to fix it so that it now doesn't read that way. And they put a little note of like, hey, the index is updated, get the new one. It doesn't have the broken rule.
That is one of the major benefits of providing rules
digitally, like we keep saying they need to do.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy about all that. Like, I know there's issues with, like, some of the rhinos have the firing deck too they're supposed to have. Other ones, they forgot to write it. There's little typos all over the place that I am sure when they do a pass in a few weeks, maybe they wait 1 month after the edition officially launches. Sometimes they're anal about that. They may fix all the indexes that way. And that's great that we can have that now. Because it used to be, like, if it was screwed up, you had to wait for an official errata for your rule book. And
every once in a while, there was actual, like, what's the actual intent of what's written? We have differing ideas on what the intent was. And as it's written, it does something different. But like, what's it actually intended for? And it's nice to have the option that we don't have to wait forever for them to fix it kind of thing. Like, so I mean, overall, I'm excited for a lot of the changes to the core rules. It does seem a lot more streamlined. Phases work pretty well. I think that there's going to be some people that are going to be annoyed, but they'll learn it and it'll work out better.
Yeah, I think a lot of stuff moved the AOS direction, which is, for the most part, a good thing. Like,
Yeah.
AOS is an easier to balance game. Like, there's a reason that things have more solidified win rates competitively in AOS.
But I think with that, we can probably go into faction by faction kind of thing, because we'll hit more of the general ideas as we do that, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, because I've got rants on certain things still, Psychic, but we'll get there when it's relevant.
Yeah. So what do you want to start with?
Let's cover Space Marines, and then we'll quickly mention each specific flavor of the Baskin Robbins, and then we'll move on to the rest of the armies.
All right. So Space Marines, the actual army rule, the Oath of Moment.
It's not my favorite army rule, to be honest. I know a lot of Space Marine players are big fans of it, and I'm happy they are. Cool.
I mean, it's pretty simple and clean, honestly. You choose an enemy unit, and you get reroll hits and wounds.
I think it's better in conjunction with other rules, which is always a good thing. The army rule gets complemented by the data sheets and stuff to make it feel better than it started out at.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can build from a good base and it enhances the actual core rules, then yeah, it's always better.
And I feel like this one actually pulls it off pretty well. There was a couple units I was really happy with, specifically because they don't care about the army rule, which sounds stupid, but Oath of Moment is like a 1 unit target.
Yeah.
And while deleting a knight a turn is great, if your opponent properly has like 10 to 12 units, you preferably on turn 2 take out more than one of them.
That is true. It is one of those, like, this is the way to target something that might not have been dealt with cleanly and let your general units that wouldn't have taken advantage of this deal with other things.
Yeah, so your data sheets can complement your army rule. Some of them just complement it correctly, like making it feel better. But then you've got units like Eradicators that are accenting it with having their full rerolls to hit and wound against monsters and vehicles, and being, spoilers, a cheap anti-tank piece. So now you can have your Oath of Moment target on this important thing, and your Eradicators still get essentially Oath of Moment when they go to target the thing they should be targeting and not using them to blow away infantry.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those that it's not the most glamorous of army rules, but it does its job well.
Yeah, it is very strong. It plays into the whole situational awareness Space Marine tactics thing. I like that.
Yeah.
I think overall it's a good army rule that can get accented well, so it's fine.
Yeah, so the detachment rule, combat doctrines,
I really like this one for a basic one.
it does exactly what you want out of Space Marines. It gives you options, and they're the separate things. Devastator, you shoot in advance. Tactical, you can charge when you fall back. Like,
You skipped Assault, the most important one, Eric. For one turn of the game, you get to advance and charge. A key important little rule, that one holding up the entire detachment.
little important rule. But, I mean, it's one of those that, like, it feels like Space Marines because you get to choose which one you need to use at any time.
Yes, and importantly, it offers choice over the game. It feels great, tactical. I love it. Just through and through. It's a great detachment rule. When it comes to their strats, spoilers for when we get to the rest of the Space Marine indexes, we found out that apparently several strats will be universal, and you just change some of them out with your detachment, which I actually think is a good thing.
I think that's a great thing. There's going to be some strats that factions kind of rely on just because that's how the army works.
Yes, if only one detachment got rotate ion shields as a knight player, you're kind of fucked.
That would be hilarious. You would never choose any of the other ones.
So that's the nice part with the Space Marine one showing us that Armor of Contempt is a core one. They've all got Armor of Contempt. It is also by far the most spammable one in my opinion. You're going to be seeing people say that a lot, just like you heard transhuman physiology in every fucking game.
Yeah, but it's not bad.
No, it's good to have core ones too from a complexity standpoint.
Yeah.
If every detachment in a codex, let's say they've all got 6 to 8.
That's probably about right, yeah.
If every one of those had 6 to 8 unique stratagems, you'd go mad. It's not a how many do I have access to in the middle of the game. It's also my opponent is playing that faction he played last game. He played these 6 stratagems.
Right.
We're playing a new game, different sub-faction, and now he's playing 6 different stratagems I have to learn.
It kind of goes to the 9th edition AdMech to a certain point where you're just like, I don't care anymore. Just tell me what happens.
So while I enjoy that you're getting more than 6 goes at having stratagems by having multiple detachments when you get your codex. I'm glad it's not every one of them changes every time.
Yeah, because at a certain point, there would be some of them, like Armor of Contempt would have been a stratagem in the other ones, but to make it slightly different, it would have been slightly different. Like there would have been some caveat, or, you know, it would cost 2 CP instead of 1.
I mean, yeah, we saw Armor of Contempt and what I'll call Reverse Armor of Contempt. We'll get a more universal name for it later. Is in about half the indexes. And some of them cost 2 CP, like you were saying. Other ones, yeah.
Yeah, so the more that we're able to accept similarities and embrace it is good. I like that. The overall stratagems that Space Marines have are good options.
They're fine. They're mostly universal.
Yeah.
The ones that are limited for very obvious reason. Perfectly good strats.
Yeah.
Enhancements, only one of them is limited to a character type. Every one that is going to get reviewed negatively by me, at least in an index. In a codex, you can have a slant detachment where you really want, like, this is the librarian detachment. Okay. But in your index, a limited enhancement that can only be taken on one unit type pisses me off. Now it matters way less for Space Marines than everyone else in addition. And it's a captain, which is like the core Space Marine leader, so fine.
I can accept things like captain just because it's such a, you're going to be using those kind of thing. But it is a negative of like, come on, man, this is supposed to be an index. This is supposed to be the more generic one. Let's follow through.
Yeah, and I do hope that certain enhancements repeat over certain detachments. I don't think we've seen it outright yet, but I'm hoping that's the case. Just because certain ones are going to be so core to your army being good, like unless they cost literally 300 points.
Yeah.
That you're going to get stuck playing one detachment. Just like whenever you had like, if you had a redeploy that was attached to one of your sub-factions in 9th. Guess which sub-faction you're playing all edition.
Just because it's clearly the best one. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And there's certain basic ones like Artificer Armor, where if you've got a detachment and you've only got 3 enhancements that fit it, throwing that in the 4th slot is generally fine and forgivable. And you're like, cool, I have access to Artificer Armor.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, it's nice to have this as an option. I guess I don't really care.
The other 3 are flavorful. This one's a general use. Okay, I wanted this one this game.
Yeah, I mean, the enhancements for Space Marines show Space Marine-y things. They're fine. They're point costed reasonable, maybe a little high for bolter discipline, but
I'm not too worried about the points on any enhancement looking through all the different index points. Like, I have a feeling the way it's going to work out is you're going to get a list where you've got less than 100 points left.
Yeah.
And you go, I can put one more shitty little unit in, or I can buy 3 enhancements. And you just buy 3 enhancements, put it on 3 characters, make them feel special, be happy. Competitively, we can get into when that'll be correct or not. I'm truly not going to care.
Certain factions are going to take advantage of it better just because, for example, Custodes is going to have points left over.
Yeah, that's true too. It does help, especially Custodes, Knights, things that we're famous for. My perfect list is 60 points short.
And I can't add any more units, so what do I do with it? Well, here's some enhancements. Go wild. But I think I agree with you. Like, generally, it's going to be fine. There shouldn't be too much of a cost to just take those points, use it if you find it's useful, kind of thing.
And I guess while we're on the subject, because it's going to affect Space Marines a lot here, the way points work.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I don't hate it. Okay, so it's AOSified. For those who don't know, previously in 40K, if you're new, you would pay points for every model in a unit.
Yep.
So an intercessor would be, 20 points a model.
And so if you had 2, you would just take that, multiply it by the number you had, and it would scale.
And every unit had a minimum count you had to take and a maximum. And then you had different war gear where you put the wrong pistol on your guy and it costs 5 more points now. Stuff like that.
Yeah, that's not a thing anymore.
All of that's gone.
We now have, this is how many points it costs for this loadout, essentially. If it's a character, it's the 1 model. But if it's a squad, you get 5 models, 10 models. And, like, this is how many points it costs for that.
Yeah, and anything in between costs the higher amount. So you're always going to run the 10 models, except for in, like, weird cases you may short yourself a model for some obscure reason, like fitting in a rhino or whatever.
Yeah. The interesting thing is it's not just 5 and 10. They did split it up as needed kind of thing.
They definitely tried.
Not always.
This is the thing I think most likely is going to change and age this episode very fast if we get into details. There are some pretty obvious ones that are like, they forgot how many were in a box.
Looking at you, Custodes.
Yeah, Custodes has one. Death Guard. There's a few that they'll get fixed over the edition. It's fine. AOSifying points, I don't have too much issue with. AOO was very fun, good format, and War Gear was essentially free for the last however many months we've been playing it. So it's not like that's a big killing point. Like how it's been, it continues to be that way. It's still fine. The AOSifying locking you to certain unit sizes, I don't have too much problem with.
It all depends, honestly, for me, on how deep the faction is.
Yes, that's a great example.
So, like, Space Marines, you're good. You can figure out how to make a list that's interesting and unique and your little take on it.
You've got 180 options.
Votann, well, you're going to have a bit of trouble.
Yeah, it's always been the wider the range of the faction, the more chance it has to be healthy.
Right.
This exemplifies that. If you've got 5 units, all with very static sizes, there's only so many combinations.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, you only have so many knobs to tweak kind of thing, and more knobs is always better than less knobs. Come on.
Eric loves a good knob.
I mean, I'm good with trying it out this way, and we'll see how it actually feels.
At worst, there's nothing in the document that says they can never add war gear cost to things that truly need it. A lot of the things people had issue with tend to be old-ass units that did not get properly changed to, like, heirloom weapons and stuff and have strictly better options still. And it's like, yeah, they should have been changed to heirloom weapons. But this is our second chance at this. The first one was, partway through 9th when they started doing, like, the Chaos Terminators having only one loadout.
Yeah, and I think it's showing it has promise.
We're getting close. It probably needs a whole edition to even it out. There's a couple ancient, awful fucking Space Marines who just need to go the way of the dinosaur. Because the problem is not so much how these rules are handled, it's how these rules have to interact with a 30-year-old kit.
Yeah, it is making things difficult, but overall, I'm good with it, and let's not get too deep into Space Marines point-costed units type thing, but I feel like generally the units feel reasonable. Like the points and expectation, like it's not like any of the main units or main models like drastically changed from what was previously.
Terminators are pretty expensive now by Space Marine standards. They got a lot better.
That's true. You're not wrong, but it is one of those, like, it feels like the points increased and they got better, but at like the same rate. So like
their Terminators turned into like our Terminators and started costing that way.
Wait, yeah, which so I guess it is different for Space Marines, but it feels like that should have just been what it was. But
there's some problematic units that I'm sure are going to get the bad touch. I would not be heavily investing in the dudes with the rocket launchers that I've already forgotten the name of.
The new ones.
Yeah, the ugly rocket launcher guys.
Whatever. I think, like I said, generally, there's no real major concerns with Space Marines units.
They are costed like they were in 9th. I will say a couple things look a little worse than I think they would have been historically, but we're going to find as we go through every one of these indexes, if you have a lot of mobility and you're a melee threat, you are paying more for that than you used to. They're trying to make that cost more than it did in 9th. So flying around with Thunderhammers ain't going to be cheap.
Right. So, okay, let's move on to some
people who fly around with Thunderhammers.
Sure.
Let's go to Blood Angels.
The Red Thirst.
All of these have the same Space Marine army rule, including Deathwatch, even though they get an extra army rule. That one makes me mad. I'm on team delete Deathwatch, but whatever. The detachment rules are interesting. The thing that I have noticed, and I'm pretty sure everyone's reading this the same way, or I'm about to start a fight in a comment section on YouTube, the way it reads, you can take your Blood Angels units, and if you don't like the Blood Angels detachment rule, you can play them in any standard Space Marine detachment. You can't play them in the Deathwatch detachment. You cannot play those in the Space Wolves detachment if you take Blood Angels exclusive models that have the Blood Angel tag.
Right. If you take a model that has that tag, it can't be in another specific tag.
Yes, but they can go back to the basic one. It doesn't matter so much for Blood Angels because I think you're just happy to have the Sons of Sanguinius. It's just a good detachment for Blood Angels, and if you want to switch things up, you can go back to being a core Space Marine just fine.
Right.
And you don't have to bring your Blood Angels exclusive unit. You can just play as Red Space Marines. It's fine. That's my general thought for all of the supplemental versions of Space Marines. I like Blood Angels. Blood Angels and Dark Angels are just Space Marine Plus. It's literally, you could be a Space Marine army and play this detachment. It's got no downside to play it. You just switch out your detachment. It's just a second detachment Space Marines get to play until October, or whenever the Codex actually comes out, but I'm betting October again.
It's got a nice flavor to it. It feels slightly different, and it feels like you're trying to be a Blood Angel instead of just generic Space Marine, but I don't know, perhaps it's just not something I care about.
Look, it's World Eaters, but loyalist. Like,
right.
When you get down to it, they're the same faction. If you want to play melee bloodthirsty Space Marines, you can just go into this detachment. And if you want, you could buy these extra models for it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have anything else to say on Blood Angels.
No, not really. I mean, Sanguinary Guard are pointed to oblivion. Just holy hell.
Yeah.
There's a few units that are like being punished, I assume. I don't know if they're trying to make Sanguinary Guard feel bad so that when Blood Angels get an actual codex, they can release the new Sanguinary Guard kit, give it a new loadout, and then give it like 50% less points so you assume it's the greatest thing ever.
Maybe.
They've done this before. I'm going off history. It doesn't deserve to be 40-something points a model right now.
No, it doesn't. Whatever, that's fine. It's okay to have some units that are bad.
Yeah, one of the sheets when we got into like the whole people complaining about certain old sheets, Death Company should have got Heirlooms Bladesed. There's no reason that they should have Thunderhammer versus Chainsword as a question. It should just be one stat line fits all. They did it with almost every other Marine, and they just forgot this one.
It feels like there was some type of internal fight to make Space Marines actually turn to the generic kind of thing, and then somehow a few of them slipped through the cracks.
How could that happen with only 480 datasheets?
Yeah, it can be changed later without too much issue, so not too worried about that.
Yeah, but their detachment, it's just a good bonus detachment.
Yeah.
Let's do Dark Angels just because it's right there with it. It's an extra option to play your generic Space Marines if you want to play this way. And if you're playing Dark Angels exclusive units, it's got some fun flavor. It's very clearly your all-in-one detachment. It's got no Deathwing slant, Ravenwing slant, anything like that. This is your generic, we are the Dark Angels, hoorah.
Yeah, I think depending on if Battle Shock actually matters or not.
They could be very annoying if Battle Shock is something very common.
But if it's not, then it could be like that doesn't matter kind of thing.
It's a really fun theme for this faction is better Battle Shocked. Like, it's like reverse Uno card.
I like that. That's kind of cool.
Very fun. And you can just try it out. If you're playing Space Marines, try this detachment out instead of your vanilla one if you get bored. It's kind of why I get annoyed that Space Marines gets the first codex because they've got so many backups.
Right.
It's like, if everyone else had this many backups, we wouldn't be as worried about not getting a codex for 2 years. Or 4 guard.
Oh, that's brutal. Space Wolves.
Space Wolves have restrictions. They're mostly Old Marine related, except for you can't take an apothecary. That's just a Space Wolf thing. They're stupid lore. Their detachment ability is probably weaker than just going generic and taking your advance and charge turn. Like,
it just is weaker. I think maybe certain lists will be able to take advantage of it, I guess, but I think what you were going to say is it's flavorful.
It is flavorful, and that's why I'm like, I don't really care. It's not that much worse. You can still have a lot of fun in this detachment, and if you get bored of it for some reason, go play in the generic attachment.
Right.
I will say, as a man who loves himself a dreadnought,
yeah,
Space Wolves is my jam right now, because Bjorn fucks. Murderfang also fucks. You could play a mono dreadnought army in Space Wolves and be just super happy.
Fair enough.
I definitely want to try a Space Wolves all Dreadnought list. I am sure our local Space Wolf player is already chomping at the bit to do it himself, so I'm sure I'm going to have to play against it before I get to try it.
You're going to be second in line on that one.
I'm going to have to get plowed by it before I get my turn.
Yeah. The points cost for those are actually perfectly reasonable.
They're okay. I'm not saying it's going to be the best way to play Space Wolves. I'm just saying it's going to be the funnest way to play Space Wolves. I'm pretty happy with Space Wolves overall. I think 3 out of 5 I'm very happy with. Let's move on, though.
Yeah, Black Templars.
Fuck you, Black Templars. Fuck you. You shouldn't exist. You aren't even a main fucking Legion chapter. And I hate your detachment rule. It is the worst type of rule to exist. And they showed it off right away, meaning this design is not going away.
Yeah, there's some restrictions and
the worst detachment rule of anybody. There are bad detachment rules. This one's very good, which is my problem with it. So, Templar Vows, also known as metagame every game you play at a tournament. If you're playing against a leadership-focused army, you can ignore it. If you're playing against a psychic-focused army, you can ignore it. If you're playing against a giant horde army, you can beat the shit out of them.
I mean, you could beat the shit out of Psychic Army too. Like, Anti-Psyker, 4 up invuln save. Like, come on, dude.
Every one of these vows would be fine because they all have their niche plus a generic good thing. There is no reason the fuck over the leadership army one needed to also just have a 6-up feel no pain. Unless it was like that's Black Templar's whole ability and you're like, okay, they screw over the leadership army and they have a 6-up feel no pain, that's Black Templars.
That would be like each one of these individual vows, fine with me, but you get to choose.
And it's not done when you make your list and go to the tournament. It's every round after you look at your opponent's army.
Start of the first battle round, choose. GG, idiots.
And this all comes at the big cost of just not taking a librarian. Because the other part of that is you have to take their identical data sheet, but it also has a multi-melta.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't have the deep hatred that you have of Black Templars, but I do not like the design of Templar Vows.
Yeah, Templar Vows reeks of my problem when we talked about Custodes with Emperor's Chosen.
Yep.
You have a sub-faction that is always the correct choice. There's no reason to do anything else.
Because you just get to choose, after the battle starts, you get to choose what you need to do.
It reminds me of the worst parts of when Tyranids had their full power hyper adaptations, which I know is now their detachment rule, but it's not as hyper focused to fuck over your opponent and also give you free shit. I despise this. Oh, and for any Space Marine players who want to also be mad with me, you know your assault intercessors you love so much? Crusaders can get 100 attacks with their chain swords.
Can they really?
Yeah, you're just strictly worse than playing as black and white Marines.
Cool. Let's move on. Deathwatch.
Team delete Deathwatch. They're fine. As much as I make fun of Deathwatch, you're cool with me, but goddamn, you're really, really annoying to read.
That was kind of what I'm at. The army rule is fine.
And then you got to how kill teams function and your brain exploded because now you have to open up the Space Marine document and search around for 50 data sheets out of 300.
Yeah, and it's not a clean design. I think that's why I don't like it.
Yeah, I love the idea of Deathwatch. I feel like the execution has always pissed me off. But like the idea of an Indomitor kill team, that's my fucking jam. I love Gravis. You have no idea. My Beetleborg boys are my favoriteest things. I will fucking defend them with my life. But reading this datasheet hurts, and I love these. And then I read the other datasheets, and I don't love those ones. So they're even worse.
I do wonder if just one of those kind of overwhelming at the moment things.
No, because they existed basically the same way all through 9th, and they were still just a clusterfuck of figuring out what they're doing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the idea of Deathwatch in some ways. I really don't like the idea of the anti-Xenos army, where if you get too fluffy, it's going to be obnoxious in certain matchups and useless in others.
Right.
If you focus more on the melting pot nature of them, they're okay. You can play up the strength of they're all of the chapters mixed up. Then I like it, but you have to be careful about how you go about it. You can't accidentally make Hellfire rounds.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think, unless I'm completely misunderstanding how this works, I don't think Deathwatch is too powerful or anything, so I'm not worried that, oh my god, everybody needs to pay attention, because clearly Deathwatch is what you should be playing if you were playing Space Marines. I think it's just one of those, it's an interesting puzzle to kind of fiddle around with while you're building a list.
It's not got, the obnoxious old stuff they used to have for fluff of, 1 CP, Necrons can't take reanimation protocols anymore, or the 1 CP Drukhari, I'll break their ankles. That's not there to be obnoxious and be useless in other matchups. They're focusing more on the adaptability. It's well done here. It's just, you have to be careful when you design Deathwatch.
So you want to do Xenos?
I'd rather be done with Imperium, because I'll be more excited when we're gone. You can tell which day was my least favorite day for index spoilers.
All right, I guess let's move into Astra Militarum, Guard.
So, out of every one that we're doing, this is the only one that I didn't read literally every datasheet for and fully absorb the rules.
I would hope so.
Yeah. At least Space Marines was like alone on a Friday. This was the last index I read on Imperium Day, which had like 35 factions that I remember.
Yeah. So Guard data sheets for command squads or whatever are ridiculous.
Oh yeah, because they're like 5 unique character models.
Yeah, and there's war gear options, and like they tried to fit as many fucking words on this paper as they possibly could. So, Army Rule, Voice of Command, I actually really like it.
It's so strong. It's stronger than basically any other factions, but you are Guard, so like the base unit is supposed to be worse. I know what you're screaming at, Mech. We'll get to you.
It is strong. It's very strong. It feels right, though. Yeah, your base units are supposed to be a lot worse. So, like, you have to have the ability to kind of augment that. And that is based off of having the officers still living.
And it's a fine design for an army. It's a very strong ability, which means you have to be careful with pointing Guard. I don't think that happened, but we'll get there. Your detachment itself.
Born soldiers, so...
It's pretty much a perfect Guard generalist detachment. It's very simple, which is okay because your army rule is orders, and orders are kind of complicated.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Like, that's my thought there.
This is just so simple, but this is an index. This is also, the army rule is complicated. There's a lot of options in Voice of Command. So I'm with you. I'm on board. Born Soldier.
It's as good as you can ask for. If you stand still, get lethal hits on an army that has famously weak actual strength characteristics. That's as good as you could ask for. Your enhancements are fine. They're whatever. They're good. I don't really have an issue.
This is another one where it's like everything's officer.
I think that's probably going to be the case for all of Guard to keep you from putting them on weird ass characters that Guard just has access to.
I think you're right, and I think this is the correct decision, but it's another one of those where it's like...
It's a little messy. I always disliked in Genestealer Cults in 9th, nearly perfect codex, but I've always hated the like, oh, I want to see how much I can make the girl with the bombs be really good, and it's like, she's not allowed to have a Warlord Trader relic. If you try, we'll shoot you. Okay, I won't get clever then.
Yeah. Stratagems.
Strats are good.
Real special, honestly. It's just solid. They have good options to augment potential problems, essentially.
All right, let's get to the elephant in the room. Data sheets. Guard have a lot of them. Several of them are fucking cracked, especially after we got the point values.
I'm not too worried about like, oh, they're too strong based on the point values, because I think that that's going to change. I think like that one, especially for Guard, is like that's going to happen.
Don't go out and buy all your chimeras, basilisks, and wyverns because they're 80 points and shouldn't be. They're gonna get smooshed.
Yeah. I do think there's some very cool things that they've done on some of the sheet.
Real talk. Favorite thing. Hands down, the number one thing for me, the Baneblade and the Lehman Russ getting split into all the data sheets. I just bitched about there being too many data sheets, but I like this a lot. Because of the whole, like, every data sheet gets an ability, this makes it so the Lehman Russ and the Baneblade, which is less important, but it's so fucking cool and iconic, gets to have more than, here is the box, put a gun on it. It's every one of these guns comes with a different ability because it's a different data sheet, so they feel wildly different. You can point them spectacularly differently if you have to. I really like it. And it makes you want to run a mix rather than I'm going to run 10 Demolishers because they're the best this time, or 10, I don't know, Battle Cannons, Vanquishers, whatever. It makes you want to mix it up a little more. I love it.
I think that it matters because switching those different profiles honestly switches like the entire theme and style of the unit.
Making it not just a gun on top that you swap out anymore and you're like, it's a Lehman Russ, but here's the profile of the gun.
Yeah, and it feels like that's the way it should have done. And I just want to give a call out for the Baneblade Rolling Fortress. That's one of the coolest fucking things ever.
It's kind of neat.
How good it, like, whatever. It's so fucking cool to me that, like, this tank is so big that you get benefit of cover by being behind it.
Which is funny because basically every pseudo fortification model that everyone else got this ability, but this one's the tank.
Yeah.
It's not like your fortification. It's your tank is your fortification.
Exactly. It just feels so right for the Baneblade.
I like it.
I can't say I'm a fan of how they did some of the data sheets with the squads having a billion fucking options because there's so many stat lines and like...
That's stuck that way though. That gets into the whole like either you give them all guard weapons 301 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And you just say good enough, or you have to get into the over-complex shooting they're probably going to suffer from. I've done Drukhari shooting phases. You get real fucking fast at, I've got 1 roll of a Dark Lance, I've got 2 rolls of a Blaster, and I've got 7 guys rolling their Splinter Rifles. And you got boom, 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 I know I'm always doing this. This is my loadout. I do this on every unit. You're gonna have to do that with Guard. If you get fancy and give one guy Flamer, one guy a grenade launcher, one guy a this, one guy a that, you're going to get timed out or cause your opponent to suffer an aneurysm and just bash you.
Yeah, very much so. And I agree with you. We're kind of stuck at this point. Like, this is what we have.
You can see the different camps at work of like, hey, we should probably simplify this so games don't take 6 hours to do a shooting phase. But all my special guys have their special stuff. This little 5-point model or 6.5-point model has to have his super special gun that his sister-in-law gave him.
Yeah, I get it, but I don't like it. So, I mean, I think Guard are going to be great.
The Guard are busted right now, I think.
Tanks are just good in 10th.
Tanks are good in 10th, and Guard have criminally underpriced stuff in the index right now from what I read.
Yeah, even if they adjust the points, I think Guard's going to be still in a great spot just because of how the army makeup is going to work out in 10th. So
yeah.
Moving on, let's go to Sisters. Army Rule, Acts of Faith, Miracle Dice. Hell yeah, dude.
Miracle Dice are the best thing you could ask for in Sisters. I love them.
I mean, it's kind of what I expect to a certain point.
I'll be very sad if they ever lose them.
Yeah, and I do enjoy the fact that, like, this is also you get it at the start of your turn, and each time a unit is destroyed. It tells a story kind of thing, and it's also good gameplay.
I have issues with the Sisters Index.
Yeah? Is it an issue with the detachment rule then, the Blood of Martyrs?
No.
This goes back to your thing that you were talking about, like, below starting strength, add 1, and then for the purposes of this ability, if a unit has starting strength of 1, consider it. It's like, man.
But note, specifically with this one, you do it for the wound if you're below half strength. It doesn't say the below half strength for the one model one. So I don't think one model can ever get +1 to wound with how this is written. I have to reread the core rules to make sure they don't cover this, but I'm almost certain they don't.
Yeah, you're right. It's considered below starting strength if it's lost 1 or more.
This gets into my whole, if you want to get gamey about it.
Yeah, no, that's bullshit.
I hate it. I hate it a lot.
This is a key example of why something like this, if it's going to be used multiple times, it should be a core rule. And then when you see it written out, it can point to you and go, oh, this is written out. I wonder why. Let's find the difference. Otherwise, it's always the same.
Yeah, because every one of these I have to double check now for when they say what.
That's annoying.
Which I shouldn't have to do, and hopefully that's FAQ'd and this is old news by the time you hear it, if you're watching this late for some reason.
I mean, like, the actual effect is good. Hit roll and wound roll, getting better. But part of the problem with that, at least for Sisters, is they're a pretty frail army. So, like, if you get hit, a lot of times you're just gone.
That's true.
How are you getting to below half kind of thing? Don't split fire on them. I guess you get the balance between if you're destroying things out fully, then you're giving them extra miracle dice. But if you don't fully kill them and you just kind of grievously wound them, they get better in combat. I'm pretty sure I would just kill them and be done with it and give them the miracle dice and accept it. But I guess there's a bit of play there, so whatever.
I think stratagems are actually super important here. Sisters have a problem of they're really bad against vehicles right now. It's essentially you're spending your miracle dice that are high rolls in order to get wounds on vehicles because you don't have much in the way of anti-vehicle.
Okay.
I think you're going to have to run castigators to some amount because they're like your only tank that can take on a tank. I think Holy Rage is super important as a stratagem because you need to get +1 to wound vehicles reliably.
That makes sense, especially with how things are currently set up with vehicle toughness.
And I really hope Holy Rage is one of those ones that you see repeated in like the melee-focused Sisters detachments.
Yeah, if they don't, then it needs to be because you get Holy Rage plus. But I agree with you that that is the kind of thing that they need access to.
I will say when we get to enhancements, I really hate Mantle of Ophelia or whatever gets into the whole, we're getting into that space I don't like that we're going to be talking about more later. Only a Canoness and a Palatine, which is their Captain Lieutenant equivalents, can use this, and it does something there's no reason you couldn't put it on other characters. You could have called out like a character who is not a vehicle or whatever if you were really concerned, but like I'm sure this is some lore thing. I'm not reading the paragraphs about it, but I don't like that your basic DR relic is limited to one of two model types.
And I have concerns because this isn't the only place that this happens. Like, is this just how they're going to balance these types of extra abilities kind of thing? That's just not a clean way of doing it to me. But whatever, it's fine. Generally, the enhancements are fine. There's nothing particularly amazing. I do think that they're going to be used. Actual units.
The major screw up to me is the Sisters. I don't like the Sisters are limited to exactly 10. Either they should have been the 5 or 10, or they should have been 10 or 20.
Right, I see what you're saying.
5 or 10 would have given them more Space Marine feel.
I don't really like that, so let's do 10 or 20, but...
And 10 or 20 would at least give them more of a, you can get 20 of them buffed by one character, you can play a bunch of nuns with guns. By locking them to exactly 10 is very annoying, and then you have the whole like, well, you can take immolators to split them in half. That's a fucking terrible rule. I hate that.
I feel like generally all of their models are a bit overcosted.
Yeah, this is why I don't want to spend too much time on points, because it gets into the weeds about like, what should this specific model cost? But like, yeah, in general, I think Sisters are a little pricey to start with. They're in an okay spot. They've got a good army rule. Their detachment rule is serviceable. They are okay, but not my favorite. Kinda wish just Sisters got a bit of a touch up. I don't know.
I think the actual sheets themselves are pretty good, but just generally it feels weak just because of the points cost.
Warsuits are finally cool. That's nice.
That is nice, yeah. Okay, let's move on to Custodes.
Custodes is where we got the actual, hey, this doesn't work in the points.
Yeah, the squad size that you're forced to do doesn't work with the box that you're able to buy.
And stuff like that I expect will get fixed very fast. I'm not gonna take points off for that. I will laugh.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. It's not a game breaker. Like,
fix it in the next 4 weeks and you're completely forgiven for having a typo in 3,000 datasheets.
Yeah. The army rule, the katas.
I still hate katas existing, but they're totally fine.
I actually am okay with these ones. I mean, I actually kind of like these ones, and I like that you choose it at the start of the fight phase, so you can, kind of figure out what you're working on, like what advances actually happened and that kind of stuff. It is pretty strong, I think, but at the same time, it's limited to the fact that you only have so many models.
Exactly. You're the hyper elite army. So it's fine that you have a strong army rule to make your units feel even better in battle because you only got so many to work with. So I still hate the detachment rule.
It's fucking bullshit.
It used to be Emperor's Chosen. Now it's Shield Host is the name, but it's still the Emperor Chosen rule.
Yeah, fuck off. It's bullshit.
It's less egregious in 10th. In 9th, it was annoying because it has the whole problem of what is the weak point to Custodes? Mortal wounds.
Yeah.
Okay, I can take this detachment and get rid of that weakness. Why would I read any further? This edition, Psychic is not mortal wounds for the most part, so it's less egregious this edition because it's harder to get mortals in the first place, but it is still that first problem of what is the weakness of Custodes? Mortal wounds. Why would I pick a different detachment when we get a codex? It's the exact same as last time, except for they lost the also you can just randomly reroll one hit, one wound.
God damn it, dude. Whatever. I think it's bullshit.
It's not that it's bullshit to me that it's too powerful, what the fuck. It's that it's bad design for a sub-faction to solve your problem, when that means now every other sub-faction has to be so strong that you're willing to have a problem again.
Right. Or has to also solve the problem at the same time as it does something else. Okay, then you've just moved it from this sub-faction to that sub-faction. Still the same problem. Stratagems seems fine. Honestly, nothing really stood out to me on this one.
Slayer of Nightmares made me chuckle. I read the flavor for some reason. It's like, Slayer of Nightmares, the effect is you get +1 to wound against monsters and vehicles, right? And you're like, okay, sure. And you're like, oh, because they're the Slayer of Nightmares. Why are they the Slayer of Nightmares? What makes them better against monsters and vehicles when you use this? The Custodes defend humanity. Okay, why did that make them suddenly better against a monster or a vehicle there? Flavor text, or did you just write this one Friday afternoon?
Oh, I don't know. Just take a generic saying that we've used before and put it in there. Call it good.
The strats are fine. I just wanted to make fun of that.
The enhancements.
This is that really annoying. Hopefully in the Custodes Codex, they give sisters a little bone, give them a detachment where they get all of the special things, but you must take a sister warlord or something, right?
Yeah.
That'll be cute. I'm fine with that. But that means that in every other detachment that they're going to get, it's going to say Adeptus Custodes model, excluding Anathema Psychona model.
Yep.
On everyone. Just like every Talon is like, excluding that one Kroot character. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, I can't say I'm a huge fan of it, but if they don't give us the special one that has Anathema Psychona for all of them, and it's a special, like, hey...
Yeah, if they don't do that, that's rude as fuck. I don't like that.
Yeah, but...
Give them a bone. Give them a detachment.
I do think, like I said earlier, like I think these enhancements could work out for the more elite ones, just because you probably will have points left over and you can just toss it on without any issue, but it's not a huge concern.
Which if you get into like the weeds on balance, the enhancements should be less good on armies where you're always going to have points to take enhancements because you can't take another unit.
Exactly. But unit-wise, I mean, they're elites.
I feel like they did shields dirty. We have to see what happens, but as someone who thinks a custodian should always come with a sword and a shield, shields got done so dirty. In 9th, there was a really good toss-up of like, you want to take like 2 shields and 1 lance guy, right? That was a normal thing to see in a list where custodians would take a bunch of 3-mans with 2 shields and 1 guy with his stick.
Yeah.
Spear, that is the word I am forgetting.
No, they're sticks. They're ancient, Brad.
They're so ancient, they're actual sticks.
That's how it's so easy to upkeep.
There was a really good toss-up, but now shields being add 1 of the wound characteristic would be like, all right. And then we're going to have the blades be slightly worse than the spears. Oh no, they're fucking terrible compared to the spears. It ain't close. They lose a strength and a whole fucking damage. They gain no extra attacks.
That's what confuses me.
You could have made the spear the good all-rounder. You could have made the blade be, a couple more attacks, and you lose an AP or a damage or a strength. You lost 2 of the 3, and you didn't gain any attacks. There is no way 1 wound is outdoing how much damage you're losing by not taking spears. It just bothers me, okay?
I mean, I do wonder if Anathema Psychona units are going to be used.
Well, you don't have to troop tax anymore, but you still have to hold back points. And I don't think anyone has sticky objectives in Custodes. Or does one of the Anathema get it, actually? Yeah, I think you're still going to take 1 unit of them. They did murder the fuck out of Witch Seekers, which I'm personally angry about.
I think you are going to take some, just not Witch Seekers.
I'm still mad about that. I loved the Flamer bus, goddammit. Give them a detachment where their flamers get an extra AP and a strength or something. Make the flamer bus a thing again.
I do think that the Anathema Psychona's Feel No Pain 3-up against psychic attacks is going to be interesting.
It doesn't really matter. Their whole thing is the anti-psyker thing. I'm okay if a Sister of Silence, a little 40-point unit that's a 1 wound, 3 toughness model, I'm fine with that in the super elite army being good against psychers.
Yes, I am as well, but I do wonder if, because they've keyworded psychic kind of thing, if that means that these units will actually be more than just sit on an objective.
I don't think that will ever be the case, especially with how I think most armies are going to not want psychic this edition.
Yeah, that's fair. Either way, like, the core part of Custody units are still Custodes, like, they're elite. They cost a bunch of points.
And I think a lot of my problems with Custodes are things that could easily be solved by a detachment, except for the shield thing. I want a Unleash the Lions, which is probably going to be locked as a single detachment's key stratagem if it still exists. It better still exist. I love turning the Terminators all into unique characters and making them run all over being superheroes. The fact that we don't have their Forge World model datasheets is really rough to analyze Custodes in the first place.
It's interesting their model count that you're forced to, because, like, for example, the Alaris is 2, 3, 5, 6.
I still think a middle ground I would accept. I would like it if we still had a point per model, but you could only take them in whole numbers or some shit. Because, like, a guardsman is 6.5, and, like, a Chaos Terminator or something was, like, 33.333. So, I'd like it if there was something in the middle where it worked that way and you just had your min and your max. I wonder if in testing, the competitive playtesters were like, I will never take a 10-man, I will take a 9, because I get rid of a blast profile by taking 9 instead of 10. And they went, fuck that, you're taking 10. And then they just cascaded from there of, like, the marketing team comes in and goes, make sure boxes are legal.
I don't know if that was ever a thought, but yes, there are some weird ones.
And the only argument I can see is about, because this box can build a character.
Right, okay.
And that's where you get into, like, the Y4.
I think it's hilarious on particularly Adeptus Custodes for the ones that are like 2, 3, 5, 6. Well, fuck it, let's put 4 in there as well.
And if you didn't want to do points per model, you could do interesting stuff like do 3, 4, 5, 6. Not for every model, but for, like, let's say that model. But say, like, 5 to 6 is cheaper than 4 to 5 or something, or 4 to 5 is cheaper than 5 to 6. Or you can get real spicy.
Yeah, it's not a linear progression. It's some type of, if you're going to take more, you're going to get a discount.
I don't know if that gets too into the weeds and it's not worth it and it makes building lists too much of an annoyance. A lot of this, I'm aware, is for the average player, not people like us who are super tryhards even when we try to turn our brains off.
Yeah.
We're still spikes to the core in some extent. They're trying to help out your average player of a game. Target Timmy, as I say from our other podcast. Like, the person who vaguely plays this 3 times a year.
I mean, they did kind of do that in Orks, is the one that I remember. The Mega Knobs 2 and 3, because of how it lined up, you got like a discount kind of thing.
Is it? Okay. So maybe that's something they open up, or they're testing it to see if, like, we'll try it both ways and we'll fix it one way or the other.
I feel like part of it was that they just fucked up and looked at nice round number and went, yeah, let's round it to that and call it good.
It's very possible. It's very possible.
But it shows that there's a possibility, and, like, I agree with you. I think it would be cool.
Again, it's a problem of, like, the way it works, AOSifying it, is probably correct for the game and healthier for the game. But I am not the target audience for that change. I enjoy spending 10 hours tweaking a list. You can't do that when you AOSify a list. So I have to remove my personal feelings from it and to think about it for what is better for everybody, which is something I know some people have trouble thinking like.
Yeah.
I assume they know what they're doing at their jobs. They are most likely doing research for what will get people to play the game more regularly, stuff like that. Or is easier to balance competitively, and they say, this will be easier to balance. I get that too.
Speaking of doing a bunch of research and figuring things out, let's move into Adeptus Mechanicus, where they did a lot of research and figured out how Adeptus Mechanicus was supposed to be.
All right, let's do AdMech.
Army rule.
Army rule is incredibly strong. Doctrina imperatives. You can choose
heavier assault.
You get minor bonuses in addition, which is something people keep on forgetting with this.
That is true. It's not just units get this heavier assault ability. It's got a little bit more on it.
You get heavy and in your deployment zone worsen AP by 1, or assault and in your opponent's deployment zone improve your AP by 1. They're very strong.
Those are very strong little abilities.
So here's the problem with the army rule. If you're aware of AdMech, go Doctrina imperatives. That's cool. That's the Skitarii army rule. You're right. They made that the AdMech army rule for the whole AdMech army.
Because AdMech is now Skitarii.
Skitarii and AdMech were 2 separate things that got merged into a single thing and kept their unique identities, which is kind of weird, but okay. I play Drukhari. I can't complain about that. You can have the part A, part B of a faction, sisters, custodes, whatever. The problem is, Doctrina Imperatives is the Skitarii rule. And they kept that fucking lore, so only the Skitarii get your army's rule. So half your datasheets don't have an army rule, because they didn't do the other half. Well, they did the other half. It's literally on Call's datasheet alone. Just put Doctrina Imperatives on everything in the army and say, look, they all deal with Skitarii, they understand the Doctrina Imperative bullshit. There is no reason they had to get all Lore Bunny on us.
Sure.
It's just very annoying when you're like, oh, this is a great, strong, and then you're like halfway through data sheets and you're like, oh, fuck, this one doesn't have the army rule.
So the detachment
is terrible. It is the worst detachment of every index. Maybe Death Guard is worse.
I think it's cool.
Okay, so sure. The detachments rule Rad Bombardment. If this was December when the AdMech Codex is going to come out, right? And this was, you're flipping through, reading all of your different detachments, and you get to one, and it's the Rad Cohort Rad Bombardment Detachment rule. This is the exact one you read and go, that's neat. I might play that one game while I'm drunk.
Yes.
And then you move on to the good ones.
Yeah, as an index attachment.
It's not a good rule. If you can do the math, this does near nothing.
I mean, yeah.
Your opponent knows you have it. It's not a secret.
But it's cool.
It's a Punisher mechanic. We come from Magic the Gathering. We understand this. Punisher mechanics are always trash. You cannot make a good one.
Well, you can.
It has to be so aggressive, it's unfun. I always think of like expropriate, take an extra turn, or steal your opponent's shit.
Yeah.
Which one of these awful outcomes would you like?
I'm with you. This actual rule isn't good, but I think it's cool. So it's one of those, like, if it was in the codex and it was like the fluffy, like, cool one, I'd be rather happy with it.
I wouldn't have a problem with this in a codex. It's a good junk food detachment. The problem is this is your index. And while AdMech is first up to get a codex with Necrons right at Christmas time, I hate that you're stuck with this shit. And, like, the strats are...
No, the strats are fucking annoying because there's two of them that call out Skitarii.
Yeah, one calls out Tech Priest, 3 of them are General, but then one of those doesn't work on vehicles, and the other one doesn't work on vehicles, and these are the exact type of stratagems that we were talking about.
These are the wrong things to do.
Although, they're not truly the worst. It doesn't say Rust Stalkers. It just does something you would only want to use on a Rust Stalker.
I hate these stratagems.
And then they've got the extra restriction of you have to be in the right imperative to boot. They're real fucking bad.
I just hate these. I guess let's keep going. Enhancements.
Enhancements was when I feared for my fucking life. This was the one I noticed where it flat out called out a specific model, a $35 45-point model you can buy in a blister pack. And it was like, only this model may take this upgrade. Get bent. And I was like, oh no, Necron Vietnam War Flashbacks 9th edition. Only your model that would never want this upgrade can take it. Oh fuck, oh god, no, god, no. But Necrons got saved. AdMech died instead. Get bent, AdMech.
Wow. No empathy for those that follow.
9th edition Necron players, we lived our fucking miserable lives with this terrible fucking idea. Other people can deal with it now. Don't make your stupid fucking 1 in 4 relics that you're allowed to use is locked to a specific model.
Yeah. I mean, beyond that...
It's a very strong one, I'll give them that.
The other ones have potential uses and whatever. Omni-sterilizers might be good. They're all fine-ish, other than...
There's Toy One, yeah.
Whatever. Actual units, though, okay. Point-wise, Adeptus Mechanicus is not good.
They might be fine. You won't be happy. We'll at least say that much guaranteed. I'm pretty sure I came up with a slant list that's very disgusting, even with the shit points. I could be wrong, I don't play AdMech regularly, but just reading profiles, doing some quick napkin math, and checking the points that I could run it all, I think there's some dirty stuff you can do with tanks and out-of-line shooting and stuff, but whatever. Kind of a slant list to survive on until December.
Call's awesome.
Call's cool.
I actually really like Call, other than the fact that, like, Canticles is his ability now.
Alright, real talk. My least favorite thing in the whole AdMech Codex. I love Castellan robots. You love Castellan robots. They're fucking adorable. They are the advertisement for playing AdMech.
Kind of, yeah.
They don't get the ability because they're not a Skitarii, so they don't have an army ability. They're like 9th edition Necrons shooting in a fucking vacuum. And you go, well, they have their dedicated leader they can take.
Ah, son of a bitch. You're right.
I was right. This fucking ability I raged about. Eric didn't think it worked this way.
No, because I read it and I was like, these are pretty cool.
You didn't read the condition.
I assumed you got it and then you could change it.
No. You have to flip a fucking coin to see if your unit turns on.
Oh boy, that happens in your command phase.
So at the beginning of your first turn, you attempt to turn your robots on. If you fail the coin flip, you can pay a CP to retry the coin flip. If you fail that one, fuck you, see you turn 2.
Oh boy.
The robots are actual trash without being in one of their protocols.
Basically.
I feel like I'd be less mad about Castellan robots if they just started in a protocol and the datasmith could change the protocols.
Even just start them in Aegis protocol. There's nothing scary about it. They don't get shot and killed as easily. But if you want to go do something with them, you're going to have the datasmith do some protocols or whatever.
I'm fine with that too, but yeah.
This is all completely ignoring the fact that the points are wildly ridiculous.
Yeah, we're ignoring points with AdMech when we're talking about that fact.
Because I had originally thought like, oh yeah, this is going to be cool because I thought you started in 1 and then I saw the points and I was like, oh wow, that's ridiculous. But no, it's both of those hits against it. So sorry, Castellan robots, maybe next time.
Yeah, and while we're here bitching about stuff, fuck AdMech flyers.
Yeah?
They made flyers essentially useless this edition because of AdMech flyers and sort of orcs and nids.
There were other problems, but yes, AdMech was the first problem.
3 of you are to blame. The first problem got the rule to ignore it, even though it makes no motherfucking sense. Why does the airplane have hover, but the Necron doom scythes, which in lore take off and land vertically and hover, can't hover? And this thing kept its busted bombs. They just don't lower movement in addition to make Death Guard even more mad. I fucking hate this flyer. Call looks great though.
Call does look great.
Shame about your troops.
Yeah, AdMech are in a bad spot right now.
Here's my thing. The army rule is very strong. If you're a Skitarii, you're hitting on 4s now to make up for the fact that your army rule is so strong.
Yeah, balance it around the fact that you have the army rule and it makes sense.
So Votann just did the same thing better. All of their normal units hit on 4s because their army rule is +1 to hit. So they all hit on 3s. And the good units hit on 3s, so they hit on 2s. They ignored that part with AdMech, and they worsened the characteristic on models that don't fucking get the army rule.
Brilliant.
I'm so mad about, I want an explanation. I literally can't come up with one yet.
Honestly, I think the problem is they don't know what to do with AdMech right now.
But why does it feel like Guard has an equally strong army rule, and I feel like they weren't punished as hard for it as AdMech was for theirs?
They weren't punished anywhere near.
And they're all stupid cheap, which I don't think that's a great answer either, because AdMech is already one of the most expensive armies in the game to collect. They didn't need to be stupid cheap and be, $5,000 to field 2,000 points.
Yeah.
There's not a solution I like other than make them more elite again, because I'm not seeing it, Chief. At least not with this terrible detachment. Maybe in December. Before we had points, I was like, alright, the army rule's making them shoot worse. Because the army rule's so good it makes them shoot normally again, and they don't want them hitting on 2s all game.
I get that. That would have reminded me of the scary days.
But then the detachment rule does nothing. So you're essentially just an army that your army rule is you hit normally, idiot. But, it's such a dangerous army rule that you had to do this. Because, if you sit there and do the math and, think about competitive games you've played, abusing assault and heavy on your entire army, you can do terrible things.
Well, it's one of those, not only do you have the ability to build your list around it, you have the ability to change your gameplay around that. It's very strong. And it's not even just that. There's also some extra bonus on it as well.
I still think there is a pretty dirty tank list I came up with abusing the combination of Disintegrators and Scorpius or whatever they're called.
Dune Riders?
Yeah. I think abusing those two, which both get imperatives because they're both piloted by a Skitarii, unlike the robot, who doesn't get it.
Obviously.
And is worse and costs more points.
Yeah, the servitors are also fucking hilarious, but...
The servitor problem, that angers me because, the entire lore of AdMech is keeping the best shit for themselves. They gave the Marines the good servitors and they kept the garbage.
Brilliant. I compared it to the Grey Knight servitor and I was like, what'd you do, AdMech?
I don't have an issue with people were bringing up the why are servitors 4 prices in 4 different armies? That doesn't bother me because a unit can be worth different amounts to different armies.
Yeah.
Knights would probably pay a different amount for basic, Cadian troops or whatever than Guard would, just to have access to that.
I agree. It's a bit weird, but it has reasons.
You can argue why a unit would have different costs to different armies, but the different profile for the exact same old shitty kit that should have been Legends forever ago and should not be legally sold anymore.
Yeah.
And then you have the gall to make it like pretty debatable for a Space Marine and absolute garbage for the people who make them.
Yeah.
Ugh,
It's weird.
I hate it all.
Okay, so Imperial Knights, I think the army rule is really well designed.
I love it.
There's been a few others that have had there's a story on what is actually happening. Imperial Knights has like a narrative.
Yes, this is something that if you don't play this game, you read it and you're like, oh, I get it. They're the guys playing the fantasy knight. They get a squire who helps the knight, and the knight makes the squire better. Okay, I get it.
And out of all factions, Knights deserve to have narratives, because it's one of those, like, a knight hits the field and that's cool. It's the big thing. And, there's going to be a lot of armies that are like, I want to see what it takes to kill that knight.
And that knight has a very high probability of doing something important. 10 random guardsmen have a very low probability of being important to your army.
Exactly. The rule itself is actually pretty good, and it is going to play well. Yeah, I think they nailed it for Imperial Knights on this army rule.
And then detachment rule. A perfect detachment rule for an index. Vanilla ice cream.
It's not exciting.
It isn't exciting. It is a perfect index detachment rule. It's not overly powerful. It's just there. It's all right. You might even pick it even after the codex comes out and you have options.
I mean, it kind of feels like it's a stopgap to a certain point of, like, if you feel like you need this as a fallback, you always have it as an option, even if the other ones that come out during the codex are more interesting. That's good.
And they get 5 enhancements, not 4. I'm always here for more enhancements.
Didn't actually notice that.
That's because 2 of them can only be taken by Questores, which gets into my I hated this when we were in our codexes in 9th edition of every Chaos Relic and Warlord trait was like, this can only be used by these specific models. Don't you dare get clever, you bastard.
It's not quite as bad if you have 5 options.
No, 3 of them are fine normal options.
At the same time, like, there's only 7 knights.
It is annoying, though, because you have to remember the Forge World Knights. So you lock all of the best looking knights out of them, which, like, I just want to play a Castigator. It looks so fucking good.
And you're going to have extra points. Knights are going to have extra points. You can put your enhancements on them.
Yeah, buy 3 enhancements with your last points. Have fun.
Yeah.
You get totally fine stratagems. I think Thunderstomp kind of sucks because it used to be you did mortal wounds so that you could use it for clearing chaff. Now you just get devastating wounds on something that doesn't have anti-infantry. So it's just your 4 attacks. If you roll a wound of 6 out of 4 attacks, that one gets to do mortals. And it's like, that's real bad now. I feel like you needed the anti-infantry to stack up there to be clearing the chaff.
But we have rotate ion shields.
It's back. Chaos got theirs. Ours isn't called that, but we all call it anyway.
It's good. It needed to exist in some way, and it does. So, box checked, good job. The actual units.
I love them. I think Knights, Chaos, and Imperial variants got away with murder. Looking at the points and how much I love the models to begin with, like, we've got real good everythings. I actually think the Questores / Abhorrent frame is finally the correct price point.
I think one of the biggest things for me is ignoring the points to a certain amount. The actual sheets read well.
Yes, and I really think Knights looks incredibly fun this edition. Everything about these 2 indexes, when we get to Chaos Knights, I'll be saying it again, everything about them feels fun. I am 100% here for them. It's like the indexes are so totally good that we can wait till the end of the edition to get our actual codexes. Like, don't care. There's enough here for me.
That is fair. Do we want to do Imperial Agents, Brad?
No.
Are you sure you don't want to talk about the new Agents of the Imperium?
Here's how Agents of the Imperium go. There's only 2 cases where I'll ever play against one. Number 1, you're a lore bunny, and I don't have to care. I'm probably drinking, enjoying myself, having a blast, and you tell me all the zany rules on that character.
And it'll be fun.
That'll be great. The only other time is you're a super tryhard, and one of them is super broken for the points, and it won't exist in 3 months, so I don't have to look it up.
I feel like at some point there's going to be enough that like they're just going to be like their own thing now.
I still think, like, if you want an actual hot take on hot takes here, Deathwatch and the Agents of the Imperium stuff should have become the Inquisition, which gets weird because technically Grey Knights are one of the three prongs of the Inquisition themselves. But they should have become, like, the Inquisition. And then you could have had a very unique feeling army where not only do you have access to Space Marines in some limited way, but you have access to all this weird zany shit in addition. But that would be interesting and make me happy with how Deathwatch functions.
That would be cool. And I mean, I think there are cool agents of the Imperium, like Vindicator Assassin.
I like Assassins, although that gets in the whole Assassins technically aren't part of the Inquisition. They're the other branch.
I think there are some cool ones there, and I agree with you. There are going to be people that play it because they're fun. And I love that that exists as an option. But I do agree with you. Like at a certain point, if they're unbalanced,
they won't be for long.
Yeah, it'll get fixed. And otherwise, it'll just be used as fluff. And that's cool. Okay, let's finish this off, Grey Knights.
All right, elephant in the room for Imperium, Eric's army. We're finally here.
Yeah, Psychic.
First time we're talking about Psychic, and it's not my Thousand Sons.
No, it's not.
So, the good. You and I are both on the front page of our indexes. I'm just saying. I'm a fan of your taste, random GW intern.
Yours is kind of more obvious.
Mine came out first, and I was like, oh, they just chose the best art. And I agree. That's why I chose it for my avatar. And then yours, I'm like, we found that in an obscure random page of the 8th edition codex on like page 115 and then found where it was digitally. I'm like, someone knew. They didn't randomly choose that image. There's 100 other Grey Knights they could have picked. I see you, intern.
I definitely approve, though. Army rule, teleport assault is ridiculous.
It's real talk. If any army rule has to get FAQ'd for competitive reasons, it will be Grey Knights.
It probably should be.
I think it's fine to let off the leash, see what happens, maybe it's okay. But this reads, like this triggers the spike in my head going, red alert, this is the best faction you're going to see. This is not okay.
Okay, so yeah, real talk. This kind of ability is the ability that a better player is going to be able to take advantage of substantially better than an unexperienced player.
Though it's still useful for inexperienced players.
Sure.
They won't be able to do the same bullshit.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like this kind of ability in the hands of somebody that's actually really good at playing Warhammer 40K, it's going to look unstoppable.
Yeah, there's a reason Cult of Duplicity was the only cult in all of the Thousand Sons Codex after they made us take only one cult. Redeploying is super strong. Redeploying and being able to go into Deep Strike doing it is really super strong.
I don't know how this managed to get printed, but I'll enjoy it while I can because it'll be fun. But I think that there are going to be a lot of people that get quite annoyed with it.
It is possible it just reads way better than it is, but I find that highly unlikely.
We both know that redeploying in Deep Strike is ridiculous, especially when you're able to do it with things that generally don't move quickly.
Oh, speaking of not being able to move quickly.
Yeah, we've got the detachment rule. Teleport strike force, teleport shunt.
Just auto advance 6 with fly.
Why not? Why not? If you got Deep Strike, just advance 6 with fly.
Is what, your entire army except for a couple vehicles, right?
Yeah.
Like the Land Raider or something. Yeah, Dread Knights have Deep Strike. Your whole army Deep Strikes.
I mean, I think there's like a couple random ones, like you said, like some vehicles and like servitors probably don't.
Yeah, who cares?
But yeah, every like actual unit in Grey Knights has Deep Strike, which means if you want to advance, you get a 6 and you can fly.
Your paladins advance 11 inches flying while going through walls.
That's not bad. It's not bad at all. It'll be interesting to see what else they can do for detachment rules because that's a pretty strong default.
I'm going to assume you're going to get one that's like, your attacks have sustained hit. You'll get generic strong ones, I'm sure, that make you think. Because you're like, I already redeploy every turn. Do I really need the advance thing?
And I mean, yes, but maybe you could do something else as well. I see what you're saying. The stratagems, man.
Generally good.
Yeah.
I don't think I hate any of them. They're fine.
It's cool to see true silver armor.
Yeah, Mists of Demos is weird in this detachment. I don't know if it's just a core one you'll have in like all your detachments,
I think it will be.
or if they were just like really trying to hammer home this is the movement detachment.
Maybe.
I just feel like you have so much movement. Did you need a stratagem for more?
You can always use more.
Oh yeah, you got true silver armor as your armor of contempt. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I can always use more, so like I'll find some uses of Mist of Demos, but I see what you're saying. Like there's a certain amount where like you can only have so much, and yeah, but generally like they've got good stratagems that'll work out. The enhancements,
Fine. I think the only one that's like mediocre is the Liber Demonica, which is a fluff thing. It's fine. Totally okay that one's mediocre.
the First of the Fray is going to be annoying.
Grey Knights is going to be annoying.
Inescapable Wrath is going to make me cry when I fail a charge, because I'm going to fail a charge even with that and Kaldor Drago.
You at least can't stack those, thank God. Drago's an epic hero, so you can't take.
Yeah.
Drago makes you deep strike on what, a 6 for a charge roll.
Yep.
Eric is going to lose that 6 with a reroll probably every other game.
If I'm lucky.
If you've never seen Eric try to roll a smite for 5 consecutive turns and periling after rerolling a perils.
The problem is that Kaldor Drago's Deep Strike, adding 3 to the charge, has that little psychic thing next to it, which means I'm going to fail. If it didn't have that and it was just like a random ability, I'd have fucking nailed it.
Speaking of random abilities that have the random psychic thing on them, let's talk about the psychic.
Yeah.
Psychic is my actual, like, one pure negative of 10th edition. They bribed us Thousand Suns players. When we get there, we have good psychic still because Cabal Rituals essentially give us the old psychic stuff back.
Honestly, like, as much as Grey Knights is a psychic army, if Thousand Suns didn't hit psychic right, there was no hope ever of having any chance with a Codex release.
My problem is Psychic, in general, does not feel good, and I think I don't have a particularly solo take on that. I think it was pretty common from what I was seeing of other people who are like, hey, Psychic looks miserably bad.
Okay, so I don't think it's miserably bad.
It's a gun. It's exactly what we feared when they talked about it. It's just a fucking gun.
No.
And sometimes an ability that on a normal Space Marine would be an ability has the word psychic in little parentheses behind it when it wants to show it's a psychic character. They would just have one less ability if they weren't psychic, apparently. But a Space Marine gets that ability.
Yeah, okay.
Let's scroll down to Voldus. He has no ability of his own. He has to use his psychic powers to lead a unit normally.
Yeah, and he is actually the only source of sanctuary.
That's what annoys me is if Psychic was truly in addition to being a normal character, like they wrote a character and they go, it's a Psychic character. Here's the bonus you get.
For being a psychic character.
We'd be more where I'm thinking we should be. I still hate the Psychic gun thing. I think the way Psychic was done best, you actually have it on Voldus. This is somewhat common on most data sheets for Psychic. When they give you the Psychic spell, that's the roll a d6. If you roll a 1, hurt yourself. If you roll a 2 to 5 or whatever, do the thing. If you roll a 6, do the thing but better. They've been doing that, and I'm like, cool. You got rid of the Psychic phase, and you made, I'm just going to roll a d6. If I roll a 1, it's bad for me. If I roll anything else, you're screwed.
Yeah, it would still feel like psychic, but that would make my rolls even worse.
A lot of Psychic units got one of those. That's how spells should have felt. But that should have been in addition to being a character. Voldus should do something as a character and then have, also he has this extra ability because he's a Psyker, here it is.
I think Voldus does. I think Sanctuary is his ability.
But the problem is Sanctuary has Psychic next to it. So Voldus doesn't have any abilities. He is John Doe, the nobody, who happens to have a big brain, and therefore that makes him the Grandmaster. He can't lead his way out of a box if he doesn't have his powers. If he stands next to a Sister of Silence, he's apparently brain dead.
It's not great. But I do think that, like, it's not quite as bad as I was expecting.
They bribed Thousand Sun players. When we get to Tzeentch Demons, it's an actual crime. It's so bad. Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's real bad. I'm going to have my rage.
And I think Grey Knights is in between there. Doesn't have a particularly good feeling. Like, when I do these things, like, for example, the Librarian.
I like the Librarian's, your Doom Vortex.
Vortex of Doom. It's still good. It's not as good as it was, but it's still good. But at the same time, because I didn't get to choose, it doesn't feel like I've succeeded at the Psychic. You know what I mean? Like, I think a large part of why Psychic felt unique was it was like you have a list of things that you could specialize in.
Yes, it's your choices have been taken from you.
And, I mean, there was a certain amount of that in 9th.
Yeah, Grey Knights already had the assigned spells thing.
But you still had enough, like, oh, the characters have actual character. And that's just gone, so it doesn't feel like I'm going to enjoy Psychic as much as I did before. But I still have some hope because they didn't completely fail with Thousand Suns.
Purifying Flame, I think it's the best of the psychic guns for my transition into psychic guns from being a normal power, and I still don't like it. It is pretty cool when you have Crow, 10 purifiers, and you're just blasting out 24 purifying flames, but like, it doesn't feel like they use psychic powers. It feels like they had a third barrel on their Stormbolter.
All of that aside, Grey Knights are going to be strong. The army ability's insane. Point-wise, Paladins I don't like, but Terminators are going to be awesome. And it's not like our Strikes and Interceptors are bad either. Like, they're still going to be very good.
I'll still try to pressure you at all points in time to run one Purgation Squad because you can shoot through walls again.
We'll see. There is a spot for the Purgation Squad or the Purifier Squad, and we'll see. I kind of like the Purifier.
I like both, and you just don't take Interceptors or Strike Squads at all.
I think you're insane. Have you looked at those data sheets?
Because those two are the fun ones.
Yeah, I'll just give up my Scout 6 that lets me have sticky objectives.
Oh, I will say this. Your Dreadnought does not get your army rule because it's venerable, and that's always been a thing.
Yep.
But it is a captain and a lieutenant in the old aura style. And this is pretty common with Dreadnoughts, at least on the Imperium half. And I think a one of Dreadnought is going to be somewhat common just because you still get captain lieutenant auras without having to take 5 captain equivalents to try to do something, or whoever does that buff now in your army.
I think because it does both of them, you might be right.
Yeah, because it is an aura too, so you can affect 3 units with it.
Yeah.
And have them still led by someone who does a different effect.
And it's not like he's point costed too highly. Like, the Venerable Dread is still fine stats for its points. It's not amazing, but...
Yeah, the only downside is you gotta haul ass. He's gonna do a lot of advancing and actually rolling for his advance rolls.
And actually rolling. That's the sticking point.
He's got those short little legs.
The Grandmaster Nemesis Dread is 245 points now. Holy shit, it's still probably worth it.
I actually don't know, because the Nemesis Dread gives up so little.
That's true. It'll depend on where the list goes, but you might be right.
I think everything else is well pointed enough that they're not like they were in 9th.
No.
I actually want to take other units now.
At the same time, I don't think they're garbage.
I think 1 is probably the right number, which is the number that should be right.
Yeah. So Grey Knights is in a strong spot, but I'm not sure how well I'll enjoy it yet after I get through the teleport around be annoying. All right, let's move on to Xenos. Let's hit Tau.
Okay.
I think Tau is cool.
I love Tau this edition. Oh my god, they look incredibly fun. Incredibly good.
Yes, they do. The army rule feels needlessly complex.
I don't think it's that bad. It's very long to read through and understand. You play one game with it, and you've got it.
I completely agree. Once you figure it out, it's like, okay, whatever. But, like, it feels like it should have been...
There was an easier way to word it for people. Because, to be fair, this is the rules correct way to be a little wordier and be very careful about using keywords. You have an observer. You have the spotted unit, guided unit. All right, good. We're using keywords. We can keep track of who is what.
I agree, it is good, but partially because 40K hasn't done that for so long, it reads weird. But the ability is strong.
It's very strong, and it essentially reads half your army, but slightly more than that because of other rules, is going to shoot at 1 better ballistic skill, which is important. That is not +1 to hit.
The detachment rule
sucks. Tau wants a codex. Tau will never use this detachment as soon as they get a codex.
Basically, it does show that the ethereal Farsight restriction is still going to be a thing.
Yeah, but you're not locked to only taking Farsight in a specific detachment. I'm okay with that level of fluff. You can't take a Psyker in your whatever Space Marine Crusader dudes.
Yeah, that's fine. The stratagems.
They're generally good. I expect the only ones that really matter will probably be the like two that are going to be in everything, which I think is Strike and Fade and Combat Embarkation.
We're on the same page. Strike and Fade and Combat Embarkation let you play Tau without just getting slaughtered in melee, without also feeling like you just ignored Tau as a shooting army.
One of those might be in only some sub-factions, and the other one's probably universal.
Okay.
But I think those two are in more than one.
But either way, the stratagems feel like they've done a good job of like keep away, but also not, let's just make it so that your gun is going to be a melee weapon because you need melee. I mean, the enhancements, I got nothing, man.
I actually really like the enhancements. So Coordinate to Engage is the stratagem where your observer also gets the guided bonus, even though they're not guided. Pure Tide Engram chip will get used so that you can double up on that. And you're probably going to be spam using those if you're suit heavy, so that you don't have to take as many trash units to act as your observer units.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then through Unity Devastation, your observer unit, you target it to be the observer unit that gets the first unit of Coordinate to Engage. The second one gets the Pure Tide Engram chip, and you end up with like a very solid core of crisis suits that can look out for each other, but still blast at full speed.
I guess that those working together with the army rule actually does synergize really well. Before we get fully into the units, I just want to say I'm a huge fan of the little models as reminder tokens, essentially, and we should embrace that.
How drones function, you mean? Yes. It's done in, like, the Genestealers have it, a bunch of armies have it.
The Orks have the Distraction Gra, and like that. Like, let's embrace this. I like this. This is good. Continue. But the unit's on its own.
So, drones. Let's talk about them for 1 second. I have mixed opinions. They cleaned up drones to only be 5 drones. You don't end up with like the weird onesie-twosie ones. I think the drones are good other than the gun drone, unless I'm stupid, looks incredibly bad. I don't know why you ever pick the gun drone.
You're not wrong, but there has to be something.
I feel like the shield drone is like auto take on suits, of course. Suits are essentially pointed like you have taken 2 shield drones on every suit. You may take like 1 marker drone on like maybe the sergeant because he'll be the last one to go, just so you have it.
Yeah.
And then like your basic troops can equip the guardian drone, so they'll take one of those probably. You get told when you're allowed a missile drone, and you usually can't take anything else in that option slot like Riptides.
Yeah, I was like, you get to have fun when you have the missile drone, but you're also forced to have the missile drone, so you get to have fun.
The stealth drone is specifically just a unit ability on the Ghost Keel, so I guess the specialty ones are all just a unit ability now. The point is, in general, I like drones. I think the gun drone looks really bad.
But you brought up an interesting one with the Ghost Keel. Those stealth drones, in addition to the rest sheet, is ridiculous.
Real talk, I'm gonna put $5 down right now. Lone Operative gets FAQ'd within the month.
That seems fair, yeah. I don't think they understood how that was working when they wrote some of them.
No, it doesn't have the exception case for closest model. When only 2 things in an army get Lone Operative is fine. But Tau can take literally all Lone Operative units, and then your entire army is immune from being shot from more than 12 inches away. And you're Tau, so it's really hard to get within 12 inches of you.
Yeah.
Lone Operative is going to get FAQ to say, or the closest model.
I think that would make sense, yes. And I think it would still be good.
It'll still be great, but it means you won't be literally immune to shooting.
I think, so basically all of the Tau battlesuits are solid, but there are some standouts.
Crisis suits look amazing and will probably be the core of the Tau army again, which is good because they're a good core for the army. Everyone loves a Gundam. I think the Ghost Kill looks very good right now.
It doesn't seem like it's balanced correctly.
No, and this is a great thing for newer players. Collect the models you like. Cactar, editor for this show, one of several. He's been on the show before. He loves the Ghost Keel. I'm pretty sure he has gone on the record saying it is his favorite model in Tau. The Ghost Keel has been bad for basically 2 editions. It looks cracked right now. Collect what you want, play with it. Eventually, it will be your unit's turn to be the broken thing for 3 months. Enjoy it as a bonus, and then it will be back to normal.
Yeah.
Don't go out of your way to purchase units you don't like because they're going to be busted for 3 months. Because yours eventually will be that.
Yeah, the ghost kill right now, it's the new hotness.
The Storm Surge looks non-embarrassing, which I love.
Yeah, okay.
It's still a toy, but like, it's a very defensible toy at this point, where it used to be really bad.
I mean, you were basically giving up and just wanted to play for how do you kill this instead of actually trying to win.
Broadsides look amazing. I just think if you like Gundams, you're happy as a clam with Tau right now. If you're a Vespid fan, what's wrong with you?
We've got the right units for the index being good. So let's move on to Aeldari, the generic elves.
Yeah, and also Space Clowns.
Right.
And also Space Corsairs. And also Space Elves who worship demon gods. There's a lot of armies in this army.
There are a lot of armies in this army, and I hated it in 9th, and it's worse now in 10th.
Starting off with the army roll. Strands of Fate is very strong, very cool, very Aeldari, very happy for Craft World for that.
It is as expected.
Detachment rule, it's so strong I don't know what could even be in a codex that would make you want to take something else. You get 8th edition Master Crafters. It was like literally all you ever picked and you still get it.
It'll be interesting.
We're going to ignore the other things on that and come back to that.
Okay, well, so we're ignoring the rest. Well, ignore that.
Let's talk about the detachment. The enhancements are okay. There's nothing really crazy going on here. Stratagems look good. Don't see a problem. Strong.
I think they're priced to be used. I think a couple of them I was surprised to see at 1 instead of 2, but at the same time, I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, Fire and Fade being 2 is okay. It's very strong at 1, I get it. It's like the flagship thing that Aeldari do, so it's like, it's gotta be there, but it was too strong at 1 last time. I'm okay with it being 2 rather than being stuck at like once per game or whatever got FAQ'd to. Alright, that's what we had to get through. Detachment looks good. Army rule is great. Let's talk about the problem. Where the fuck are the Harlequins?
Where the fuck are the Harlequins?
All right, so I did the math today. I opened up Excel. I made an entire sheet. I can even screen share for Eric, but I made an entire sheet for all of the Harlequin units, their point costs, how many I want to put in a list, and if I can get to 2k points. Harlequins technically still exists, and you can even run 2 flavors.
Really?
Weirdly enough. So, at the point cost for a 2k game, if you run 6 Starweavers full of troops, and you run those with generic HQs, right?
Yeah.
Throw in 6 HQs of your choice. I did a Solitaire, a Death Jester, 2 Shadow Seers, 2 Troop Masters, just to randomly pick stuff. I'm not min-maxing this, right? So we've got 6 full transports. I take 6 Skyweavers, which are the bikes. You have to take them in 2s or 4s, not 3s, which is obnoxious. I really want to take 2 units of 3, but I guess I'm taking a 4 and a 2 or 3 2s. I don't know.
Okay.
And you take 3 Void Weavers, which is the tank, which is pretty good actually. You come out to 1930 points. Then you fill the rest up with 3 Warlord trait, relic, whatever, enhancements for your characters, and you're sitting pretty at just shy of 2k. This will look a lot like how Soaring Spite did in 8th, how Light Sadith did in 9th.
Yeah.
The difference is you are stuck in the generic Aeldari detachment and army rule. Troop Master being your warlord means you get to run the 6 troops and Skyweavers. So you can play this.
Okay.
So you can play a pseudo Light Sadith, but you're stuck again, not in what you would expect Harlequin's rule set to be, but with the Aeldari one. You could also...
Okay, what else do you have?
Instead of running like that, we drop out our Star Weavers. You can even drop out Void Weavers if you want to go like super into this. And troops can be run in larger quantities, up to 12. That lets you run essentially Frozen Stars, or Dark or Twilight Sadith, or whatever Frozen Stars got turned into in 9th edition.
Yeah, it was Dark Sadith.
Okay, whatever. But Frozen Stars, so you've got your melee-focused version instead, where you just run up field. There's 2 ways to play Harlequins. It is the 2 most common ways to play Harlequins. No one ever played them any other way. They both still exist.
I mean, to a certain point, there's only so many ways to play it because you only have so many models. So, yeah, okay. But at the same time, are you actually playing Harlequins? Or are you just playing Aeldari with checkerboard?
This gets into my thing. Okay, ready? I'm in the coping phase.
Right.
I really wish GW would come out and say something one way or the other. An article would solve all of this, but I think them ignoring it is them trying to push the problem to the side for 2 more years so that it's someone else's problem.
I mean, I guess, yeah, but I'm pretty sure that them ignoring it is the thing that they're saying. Just give up. Harlequins aren't a thing anymore. We don't want it. We're going to technically allow it, but no, we don't want it anymore.
In the FAQ doc thing, the designer note doc that came out today, right? They had the paragraph about how if you can gain battle line in some way, which is normally done through either a warlord giving you battle line or a detachment giving you battle line, then blank rules apply because technically that would be illegal. You have to make your list before you get to the point where you have that warlord. So your list is illegal until the warlord declaration. They're like, stop it, you can do that.
Oh, I see. Yeah, like the sequence of what goes first kind of thing.
So that's irrelevant, right? The main thing is, will Harlequins get a detachment that goes, if you take this detachment, you can't take list of units, however, these units become battle line. And then they have their detachment ability, which will be like Clown Posse, and it'll do some rule break thing and everyone will clap, and they'll get unique stratagems. They'll probably keep Fire and Fade and one other, and then get like 4 funny stratagems and a clown nose enhancement. And then you pseudo have them in essentially the same way you have them now, except instead of the broke-ass laughing god that had to be deleted so they didn't have an army rule anymore, you just inherit the one from Craftworld, which is still broke-ass. Like, it's good as hell.
I think that is a valid possibility.
And I can argue Strands of Fate is also a Harlequin ability. It's Craftworld, but Harlequins are also the, like, they always show up at the right time to do the correct thing.
Even then, I don't think it would feel...
It's the, like, holdover, we still don't know what to do with this, you can continue to live. But they really need to say, like...
Nah, we're no longer on life support, just pull the plug.
Yeah, either that has to happen, or the Codex gets announced, and they're like, by the way, Codex Harlequins is coming, they won't be in the Aeldari Codex when it comes out. Use the index until your Codex comes out.
That'd be cool. I don't see it, though.
And also it's coming out with 5 new models.
Yeah, right.
So you can at least be like a small-sized army instead of a non-army.
And we'll actually put the boxes on the shelves instead of hiding them.
That's why I feel like you're correct. And the answer is just they're hoping to kill them quietly with a pillow in the middle of the night and hope you wake up and think they died of natural causes.
Yep.
I hope that's not the case, because Harlequins are way cooler than Craftworld. I'd rather Craftworld die. It's so fucking boring.
I don't think you're going to get your wish, but...
Just move Wraiths into Harlequins and delete Craftworld. Nothing of value will be lost.
So, Harlequins aren't the only ones that are in here. We've got Ynnari.
Oh, Ynnari, you're so fucking weird. They need to probably admit that there are races in the galaxy other than the Imperium of Man and give us a bunch of complementary codexes for each Aeldari faction and then have souping rules. Because Ynnari is like this weird band-aid patch they do.
Yeah. You could even expand the Court of the Archon.
Let's not go insane here.
It's not going to happen, Brad. This is what we get. We get Aeldari, Harlequins, which are basically dead, and Ynnari.
But don't worry, we wrote an entire codex for Black Templars.
Yeah.
And gave them unique models when they're just a fanfic chapter.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we both think that Harlequins and Ynnari are more interesting, but...
I feel like I'd be less salty if this was Codex Ynnari, and it was like, Aeldari and Harlequins are now falling under the Ynnari. And it's like, alright, lore moved forward, interesting, I don't really like it, but sure. Instead of like, just trying to delete everything they were trying to make Eldar interesting. Alright, enough complaining about Eldar, let's talk about Eldar. Let's talk about Drukhari.
Army rule.
Power from Pain is fine.
I think it's cool.
It's not my favorite version of Power from Pain. I liked the one from 9th. This one is more Power from Pain. But then we get into the whole Drukhari stole Khorne's thing. So Khorne beat up Tzeentch and stole Tzeentch's casino machine. So now Khorne has a Tzeentchian ability in World Eaters, which is weird because Drukhari stole their shtick. I don't know. It's a fine army rule.
The detachment rule. Sure interesting, isn't it?
This is the worst detachment ever. I hate the One Piece friendship ship that we're all stuck on as Drukhari players, who famously don't get along with each other, like very wildly different things, and you're forced to run everything in a soup right now. And everything in this detachment, the rule, the stratagems, and the enhancements all follow the just run one of everything lol. Even if you don't like it, suck it up.
It doesn't make any damn sense for Drukhari.
A witch player shouldn't have to play homunculus units, and a homunculus player sure shouldn't have to play with ugly-ass witch units. No bias.
If you do actually embrace this, the detachment rule is not terrible because it does let you just freely use pain tokens.
No, I still think it's terrible. You get an extra 3 maximum. It's not every battle round, Eric.
Oh, that's yeah, okay, never mind.
It's bad.
Let's move on from that nonsense and look at the stratagems.
The stratagems that say Cabal, Witch Cult,
Yeah.
Archon, Succubus, and Homunculus. You can only use this if you have all 3. Boy, oh boy, what a fun stratagem list. You have 1 universal stratagem, and it's Fire and Fade.
Which is nice.
It's a good stratagem, but it's like, we've got 1 stratagem.
Well, no, you get 2 because you get 1 and then whatever.
Yeah, whatever your flavor gets.
Disappointing.
Oh, let's go to the enhancements. I wonder if those will be... Oh, no.
Hey, look, they're the exact same. There's 1 homunculus, there's 1 archon, and there's 1 succubus, and then there's 1 generic. Cool, good job.
So, the bad is out of the way. The detachment is everything bad about this codex. The index is really good for Drukhari, for the most part. I'm sorry, people who are fans of witches. Holy hell, they did you dirty.
So I'm not crazy. It looks like they're just bad.
They went from glass cannon units to just a piece of glass.
There's no cannon.
No, it's a vase.
Okay.
Succubus is essentially mandatory, and they still don't do anything.
The other parts, though, I mean, it generally looks like they kept about the same power.
Cabals and Homunculus Covens made out like bandits. There's good stuff all over the place. Incubi also got done pretty dirty, but not as bad as witches. Whoever priced Kronos, I love you. Please give me like 6 months before you fix it. It's not okay, but I'm gonna fucking play them, and you can't stop me.
I guess I didn't know it was quite that much, but...
They're 50 points. A Talos is 100.
I see.
The Kronos is better.
That'll be interesting.
And racks, because options are free, the thing I was already going to do, even if it was bad, is now correct, which makes me even happier. As a Covens unit, I am eating great right now. As soon as we have a better detachment, I am in heaven until I get nerfed into oblivion. My Cabals, which I'm also a fan of, fantastic as well. There's a lot of good shooting in this army. Scourges are criminal.
It kind of seems like everything other than witches went down in points.
And again, if you are mobile and melee, they decided that 10th edition doesn't want you. It happened in Space Marines. It's right front and center in Drukhari. There's a serious shift. I don't know if it's bad for the game. It may be good for the game long term, but if you're a fan of mobile melee units that can delete stuff, you're not enjoying the beginning of 10th at least.
Which, I don't hate going through phases of this kind of stuff to a certain point.
I could get into like a whole why I think they did it. I have to play 10th to find out. But my thoughts are, 8th was considered a very shooty edition. You blew your opponent off the board. Everyone's playing on Planet Bowling Ball.
Yeah.
They made melee units better in 9th. And at the same time, individually, everyone else started actually using terrain. And terrain mattered in 9th. So now you had really mobile, killy melee units that could constantly be hidden until they were already in combat with you.
Right.
And so it was a very melee-heavy edition for the most part, other than AdMech. I have a feeling 10th is trying to counteract what happened with 9th by being like, oh, if cover is this good, you shouldn't have had those toys.
Right.
But I don't know if that's the case.
We'll see. It at least seems like they might have thought that.
We'll find out. I guess let's move out of elves?
You want to talk Necrons?
Sure.
Their army rule, reanimation protocols.
It's okay. It's always mid as hell. It is accentuated to being good because of stuff later in this index, for specific units at least.
Yeah, but I think it nailed like the base starting point.
It's just 8th edition reanimation protocols.
I think it did a good job of having a core base that could be adapted and enhanced beyond and be very annoying to play against in certain loadouts.
I am almost 100% sure Reanimation Protocols is going to get FAQ'd within 6 months.
Yeah.
The fact that you can stack everything you can stack will get fixed so that you can't average 24 models returned out of 20. Yeah, Necron Warriors specifically are going to get a bad touch later. Reanimation protocols are fine. They're mediocre. They're not my shtick. It's not why I'm here. Whatever.
Detachment rule, command protocols.
I did not like it.
Does it remind you of 9th, where you had to have something in the area?
Yes. Our detachment rule gave me PTSD, and I was expecting that I was going to be paying 150 points for a warlord, because they have consistently priced AdMech at 45 points for an HQ, and Necrons for a worse HQ at 150.
This is the kind of thing that, like, reading command protocols, I was very scared, because if they had kept their nonsense, this would have been awful.
Yes. I'm actually very happy it's a detachment rule. If this was the army rule, you would be stuck with always having to take advantage of this and not having other styles, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Necrons is more complicated than that. That's one way to play it, and I'm fine with that being the default way in the index.
I think it makes sense for it to be the default way.
It's totally fine. I'm okay with that, as long as it's pointed well.
Right.
Which it is. It's very, very good.
It turns out that they did point cost Necron characters.
Correct, for the first time ever. It looks criminal, but it's actually just correct.
Honestly, is just what they should have been.
They're so bad. Also, they still managed to make the stupid Scorepack Lord terribly overpriced. He's not good. Stop making him so expensive.
But it's nice to see that the characters are actually going to be used. Stratagems...
They're fine. They're so vanilla, and it pains me because, again, it's PTSD from the 9th edition codex, and we feel like we're celebrating the worst codex ever written here.
Yeah.
It's literally, hey, remember the worst army rule ever? Would you like to be reminded of that every time you use a stratagem?
Yeah. I mean, at least they're cheap, though.
It's fine. They're pretty good. I have a feeling that each one of them probably goes to one other detachment. None of them feel like a universal, this is the identity of the army.
Yeah.
I could very much see each one of them goes to one other detachment, and that detachment is more themed in that direction. Enhancements. Veil of Darkness scares me. Enhancements better be able to be in multiple detachments, or we might be stuck here.
I was like, why does it scare you? But yeah.
Because we found it. If we found it here, it means it's not anywhere else unless it can be in multiple locations, in which case I redact my issue.
But yeah, Veil of Darkness is good.
Importantly, if you look, they all say Necrons, 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 Necrons. None of them say, random lord you would never want to put this on. This is a big upgrade over 9th. Necrons may actually be buffed with their 10th edition index versus their 9th edition codex, if you don't take all the FAQs. It's just funny that every other army feels probably nerfed with a few exceptions. Some feel like very much side grades. Necrons feels like straight up like, damn, I can't wait to play with my index.
Yeah, no, I don't even think that's a debate. Like this Necron index
is good, and our codex was really bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, these enhancements are going to be used.
I will say, Sovereign Coronal is one of those relics I don't tend to like, where it is a requirement, it is a tax to play the detachment. I believe the detachment will not play well without it.
Yes.
I think you're going to always take a Coronal in this detachment because you need the AoE of everyone around me is led by me.
I agree, and I think that that's also why I'm not a fan of it being pointed at 30 points or something like that. Like,
it's flat out you will be taking this no matter what. It's the first 30 points you took.
Yeah, but whatever. I mean, it does help the detachment rule, so.
Okay, so I have not been talking about my favorite combo in every army, mainly because we'll probably do that for an episode later, so this is not 17 hours long, but I will drop this one on you because it's my favorite thing ever. The second they showed how army construction worked, my brain went, Brad, if they don't do anything stupid, we'll be able to run like 9 Catan.
Fuck you.
Then we saw the data sheets, and it was like, oh my god, the Catan don't have enslaved Star God anymore. You can just equip them. And then I was like, oh wait, but they're all epic heroes, and they'll do that to the generic one, so I can only take one. They forgot. Transcendent Catan can be taken by ×3. You can have 3 of them, and you can give them relics. So, the Sepathermal Weave, which gives a 4-up Feel No Pain.
That's dumb.
On a Transcendent Catan who halves all damage he takes.
That's dumb.
You shoot me for 6, I take 3, and I roll away 1 to 2 of them.
I mean, luckily those are costed the most.
Yes, that was the thing where I was like, they totally knew. They were just giving me this one. This isn't me spitting in the face of God. This is God telling me I can do it. I wanted this to be spite, but they knew. They're letting me play with my toy.
I like all of the Catans.
I own every Catan. I own multiple Transcendent Catans. We are going to party. The only thing I don't own that I have debated buying the official model, even though it's a stupid ass idea, is a Tesseract Vault. And the Tesseract Vault kept all the fun powers. And while it's not good, I think it's just good enough that it's worth running for fun.
You're dumb.
So I might buy a Tesseract Vault.
You're dumb. I agree that it's not embarrassing, but you're still dumb.
Okay, so we didn't talk about this with Space Marines, but here's something I am generally concerned about with the design in these indexes that may be okay long term. Named characters. We ignored it in Space Marines because we would be here for 6 years. Space Marines has like 130 character data sheets that's approximately correct. About 120 of those are named old fine cast Space Marine ugly ass models you have to zoom through, right?
Right.
Every single one of them was handcrafted with a special ability that is only on that data sheet and it can lead a unit.
Yeah. So if you want the ability, you have to.
You have to run this old fine cast old Marine.
Yeah.
That's annoying, but I am a fan of the fact that in Tau, in 9th edition, you have the choice of running like Farside Enclaves, or you can play the Tau sub-faction and play all the Tau named characters, because they have like 30 named characters, and make that your list slant, and it's a very cool, fun, semi-competitive build.
Okay.
That doesn't bother me too much. So it is okay if they always price exactly right for every named character.
Which is
really hard. Necrons has a lot of named characters that are awful old shitty fine casts, and I will 100% tell anyone, even if this blackballs us from GW forever, never buy one of these fine cast models, find any proxy alternative on the planet and buy that instead.
big fan of the 3D print your own.
Yes, I will be 3D printing all sorts of named Necron characters so I can use all the fun abilities that are only on a named character who I don't like. And this is a thing I don't like from a standpoint where the game is about your guys. Even when I play Ahriman in Thousand Sons, you know I have my chicken head Ahriman that I play as my own named Thousand Sons character instead of Ahriman. I just use Ahriman's datasheet.
I do know that you're a special little snowflake on that, yes.
Exactly. Because it's more fun to me to imagine that this is like my nobody's team. This is their story going on.
Right.
It's not something that has to somehow weave into the canon of a named character who's important. I'm okay with that when it's like a big shiny model like Magnus or Silent King and just watching him stomp around. I don't like that I randomly have to explain why Orokin showed up today because I want a 4-up Feel No Pain.
I get what you're saying. Alternatively, I think there are a lot of people that are going to enjoy being able to play Trazen and smack somebody with an empathic obliterator.
No one is going to enjoy that because you chose the worst option in 2 ways. 1, Trazen is the only named character with an awful datasheet. 2, the empathic obliterator somehow still manages to be worse than a random stick a fucking Skitarii Marshal can hold.
Is it really?
I will never understand why this doesn't have AP. It is like an antimatter staff that blows shit up. It has 0 AP. It does D3 damage. It doesn't even do like a flat number.
Wow, that's really bad.
No, you chose like the perfect bad example, and I love that because it lets me rant. Thank you. You softball pitched that to me. Yeah, but overall, I really do like Necrons right now a lot.
I mean, I think they've done a good job of balancing where the characters get slotted in kind of thing. Like if you're going to actually squad them.
Yeah, I don't have too much issue with any of the normal stuff going on. I think destroyers are very playable right now. I really want to see a destroyer sub-faction thing come this winter. I really, really want Canoptics to be good because I am a Wraith man.
I think Canoptic are set up.
They're exactly as mediocre as they were in the 9th Codex. Destroyers look better off. Canoptics, because they can't get led properly and a whole bunch of other stuff, they've got issues. This is not their detachment, though. They get nothing from this detachment. So if we get a detachment that Canoptics are good in, then I'm going to be happy.
Necrons are in a great spot, especially in comparison to where they were.
Real talk. 10 Immortals with a Plasmancer, all of them with Tesla guns, actually looks good.
Fair enough.
All right, Eric, it just passed midnight, so what do you want to do for our next one?
We've just done a couple of yours, so it's also getting a bit late. I want to bring some hype. Let's do Orks. So Orks, army rule, obviously the WA, and it's nice and clean.
It's a solid iteration of the WA. It's only one turn, but it is very strong.
And there's none of the nonsense of like, oh, there's a speed WA. Nah, it's just, we've got the WA. Call it and kill your opponents.
If I had to say something bad, it's 1 turn out of 5 you get your army rule.
Yes.
But you're getting a hell of an army roll.
There is some issues because, like, you choose it at the start of the battle round. So if you're going to try and use it defensively for the 5-up invuln, you let your opponent know
that this is your WA turn, yeah.
Yeah, and so they're like, oh, I guess I'll just hide so you can't advance and charge and kill me. That's a minor downside to the strength that you get from calling the WA when you're going to charge and kill the opponent. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it's still a good rule. And I mean, I'd be kind of mad if it was anything else. I sort of wish it had the 9th edition second turn that's like the cooldown. So it feels like, okay, for 2 turns I get my army rule, but only 1 is the real hype one.
I did like the way 9th eventually got to it, but I feel like this...
It looks fine.
And I think it'll be easier to balance additional detachment rules around. So we'll see.
Speaking of detachment rule, though.
Yeah, we've got Get Stuck In.
It's sadly melee only, so it's not also Daka, which I assume will be a different detachment rule.
Yeah, I would hope so.
It's a lot to ask for, but I hope that one gets sustained hits too for shooting weapons.
I mean, as it is, Get Stuck In is good.
It's pretty damn close to just playing as Goffs.
Very reminiscent, and there's a reason Goffs was strong, so Get Stuck In is going to do well.
Shooting Orcs kind of gotta wait, but it's always been the side thing. It's okay.
Yeah, I actually am good with the shooting thing becoming part of the Codex as a different detachment, so long as it exists. And they didn't just forget about it. The stratagems?
Well, they're better than 9th, that's for sure.
I think they're actually pretty good, honestly. There's nothing, oh my god.
There's a few rules that don't seem to work right. Mob rule is one of them. It just needs a wording fix and it'll be fine. For those who don't know, mob rule ends at end of phase and it should end at end of turn.
Because this is during your command phase. But... that's fine. That's all easy fix, whatever. The enhancements are okay.
They're only okay.
They're a bit of a letdown, but...
I think the one that's a letdown for me is the Kill Choppa. Looking at Orc characters, they all took huge hits to how killy they are. Orc characters are not the fun big boss who goes out and kills 10 dudes. They're like a slightly better knob, and the Kill Choppa doesn't do much for that.
There's still a few good smash your face in, but generally, yeah, the Kill Choppa is not really how Orc characters are doing their things nowadays. But it's not like it's bad.
No, I think Follow Me Lads is really good.
Yeah?
I actually do, because the extra 2 inches, Orcs aren't moving very fast without a vehicle. And with Advance and Charge, vehicles get awkward, right? It doesn't work the same way when you disembark from vehicles. So I still think that's going to be good, especially with if you're going with a Mega Knob unit or something where they're kind of slow. It could help them not need to truck up board. I don't know.
Okay. 2 extra inches to the move is never bad. Okay. There could be actual valid uses of it.
None of the Orc enhancements seem very good to me. You'll take 1 or 2 when you've got points for it.
Yeah. That said, the units...
oh, the units.
...are cool.
Yeah, I think Orcs just looks generally fun.
So at the end of Arks of Omen, it was one of those Orcs just got to do a bunch of fun stuff. You got to do whatever you wanted.
10th edition is the evolution of Arks of Omen.
Yeah, and it feels great for Orcs. We get to do fun things.
The Gorkanaut has a 20 attack Shudo that has a rapid fire 10, so you still get to fire 30 times.
Oh...
The Gorkanaut's under 400 points, right?
It's solid.
Is it 300 points?
Yeah, Gorkanaut's 290 and the Morkanaut's 305.
So the Gorkanaut looks pretty much like a Questoris Frame Knight. It's different, but it's pretty close. And it's real cheap. It might actually not be terrible to take one.
I think either a Gorgonaut or a Morgonaut are very reasonable. They're probably not optimal, but they're at least an option that will do things instead of just being, wow, that looks cool.
I do think Orks, they're one of the factions that gets the most out of the everything gets an ability. Like we talked about with the Guard Lehman Russes. All of the like knob butts, like all of your elite Orks, your Commandos, Ludas, Flash Gits, each of them gets a unique ability that really helps them stand out from the others. They don't feel like weapon swaps on a generic knob.
Yes. I mean, there's still a few that like Big Mech with custom force field and Big Mech with shock attack gun.
I actually felt like those actually feel unique for once, instead of just they make the force field really bad so you'll stop taking it.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel kind of unique, you're right, but at the same time, like, it feels like it's still, do I really need both of them?
You would rather not have to have it be one sheet and only get one ability.
Right.
If it became a war gear, they'd probably lose something.
Yeah, you only get to choose one kind of thing.
And like the shock attack gun gives you the more DACA ability, which makes it fun, and you can make him go with like some shooty boys or Ludas or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you've got your defensive and your custom force field guy. Oh, he also gets the more DACA though. I figured that was the exclusive rule for the shock attack gun. Okay, I kind of wish they had been differentiated more. I see what you're saying now.
They have differences, and I can see it, but there's a couple that I think could have done better. I mean, basically everything is playable, honestly. Like other than the Stompa.
Oh yeah, the Stompa's real bad. Real bad.
Other than that, I think basically everything has potential. And
can I say I love Mozrog?
I was just going to say, Mozrog might actually get used.
He feels real good.
It was always just get the beast boss.
I'll also shout out, knobs feel really good. They're a unit that like the entire time we've played, knobs have been like the ew, don't take knobs, use them for bits. Knobs actually look like you might be using like knobs with a war boss and have a nice, pretty tanky unit.
Yeah.
Because they're toughness 5 and -1 to wound. Like if you shoot a bolter at them, you're only wounded on 6s.
That's pretty good actually.
And they've got 2 wounds. Their save is only a 4, but whatever. You can't have everything.
And it's still an orc. Yeah, I mean, it'd be neat to actually be able to play them. I do actually like that the Runt Herd is put into with the Gretchen and like...
It's not a separate thing anymore that no one ever took because they just wanted the Gretchen. Yeah, it's just a unit now. Jokes aside, I think actually taking like the 20 Gretchen with 2 of those Runt Herds and Zogrog isn't terrible.
I was gonna bring that up, but I don't think it's good.
I think you're going to play it though.
I think I'm going to try and play it.
I will say, with your Grot obsession... Mech guns are looking real spicy with the points.
Yeah.
You might be able to play like 9 mech guns.
It would be interesting. I haven't fully thought through on what's possible here, but that's partially because it feels like anything is possible.
The weird boy, they showed him off, and I think it was disingenuous how much better he is as a orc psyker than like any other option Orks is getting.
Yeah, just a bit. And I think that that's one of the great things about how you can put the ability on like the character sheet and then put that with the actual units, and you get like these weird orky things. You know, like it feels like orcs are doing just dumb shit. And it's working out. So I think Orks did a great job of showing that like you can actually squad things together and it feels right instead of, I don't know, I guess with 9th, it never really felt like you were actually playing like a squad.
I get what you're saying, and I do think 10th does that better.
And it seems fun in Orks.
Yes. Orks lore-wise is all about the, like, having the boss. Everything revolves around, like, people following a leader.
I'm glad that they were able to encapsulate that and it feels right. Orks is a big win for me.
All right, are you ready to talk about Xenos Admech?
Sure.
Let's talk about Leagues of Votann.
So, Votann's army rule, I have the Ancestors, is the fixed grudge token.
Basically called during the Did They Nerf Them Too Fast episode thing we did. I don't remember what we called that. Where we agreed they did not nerf them too fast. That was correct to do. It was well done. But we basically called, like, Judgment tokens might come back next edition, but they sure won't look like this.
I mean, this is a perfectly perfectly fine version of it. It follows the flavor well enough, and it has a powerful effect.
It's a good army rule. They pay for it, just like Admech did, by worsening ballistic skills so they don't hit on 2s all game. However, they did it right, as we said before, and the elite units still hit good.
Right.
Like, you've got your Hearthguards still hitting ballistic skill 3s, so they hit on 2s, because they're the elite dudes, as it should have been for Admech.
Except, yeah, detachment rule
I don't think it's very good.
seems pretty bad, honestly.
So the first ability is like the real one of just start the game with 2 judgment tokens. The second ability, while it takes up more physical space, I don't think is very important. It was just because they were like, what's a little extra we can throw on there?
Right.
It's a fine vanilla faction. I don't think it's a bad detachment rule. It's just, I expect after your codex, you'll be playing other stuff.
Yeah. The 2 judgment tokens right away is kind of what is useful out of it, but...
And you have other ways to do it, assuming enhancements exist in more than one place, stuff like that.
Right.
After an FAQ, which we'll get to in a second.
The strats are... I don't know, man. I've gone back and forth on liking several of them.
I don't think there's a problem with them. They're totally fine. They're nothing to write home about, but they're totally fine.
I guess part of my issue is Votann. Votann kind of has an identity crisis for how I expect it to play.
I don't know if it does, man. It plays exactly like you expect dwarves to play. It's just fantasy dwarves. They've got good tech. They hold grudges against people. They've got good armor. Everything here does the thing that I expect them to do. They've got their warrior pride thing, like caring about the ancestors and Gimli's family and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know, man.
It's a dwarf. What do you want?
I don't know. I guess I just want it to be more unique. Because it just feels like all of this is just generic, random shit that has been...
You're describing Eldar.
Yeah, I am.
It's the same thing for a different crowd.
All right, it is fine.
I like their enhancements, although the one that is like the auto take needs a fix. Appraising Glare technically ends at end of phase. It should say end of turn.
Oh, see another one of those.
It and the Orc one, there's a couple where they said phase instead of turn and they don't do anything unless they say turn. I expect Appraising Glare and Long List are like 100% of lists spam out judgment tokens.
Yeah.
And then you always take a call. Obviously, you're going to be dumping judgment tokens all over the place. It's going to feel like a cross between where Admech and Space Marines are. And I would say eliteness-wise, that's about where they're standing, is Space Marine adjacent, Necron-ish. I say Necron because the Hearthkin Warriors, like, nail Necron Warriors pricing. They're, like, slightly more expensive, but they have all those options that are all free, whereas Necrons don't get any of the shiny bits.
Right. Okay. I can accept that. When you said it, I was like, that doesn't sound right at all, Brad. I think you're insane. But looking through it, yeah.
Ballistic skill 4, because you're going to upgrade it to 3, and they didn't want the basic troop to have ballistic skill 2 all game, basically.
And then there's a bunch of war gear options that make things...
And then, I mean, like, Hearthguard are T6 2 wounds. They're essentially Gravis.
Yeah, essentially.
They're also, like, the thing I like best, which is probably why I'm equating them to Gravis.
Yeah, I was like, 2 is basically the same as 3.
Shut up. I hate they're not called Berserkers, which I found out literally yesterday or today.
I think they're actually pretty good.
Yeah, they're very good. I don't like Slayers in the fantasy stuff. I don't dig the naked fat dude vibe. I see that in the mirror. I don't need it in my game.
That's funny.
They're even all balding. It's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, other than that, though, like, I think the Berserks are good. The Lane Fortress?
Okay, so the Sagittar is too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And the Land Fortress, it sounds insane, but it's not that much. But it's probably about 40 points too expensive.
I mean, it's too expensive.
At 200 points, I think it's an incredibly good model. It's like 245 or something.
Yeah, I think it is 245, which is...
The real range is probably like 220, I bet. But whatever. It's in the ballpark. You can play one, it won't be the worst thing.
But it's definitely not going to be the best.
I expect it won't be a ×3 in every Votann list like it was.
No. And if it is, then...
something happened.
Or Votann's doing very poorly.
I think if I were to do anything in Votann, I would let you double up on the size of the basic troop. so that you could take 20 of them, like a Necron warrior, which is exactly what I felt with Sisters. If that was like a tier, so you've got Spacemans at 5 to 10, and then you've got the like half step below of like we're not Space Marines, but we're famously tough outside of being man in tin can.
Right.
And those were all the 10 to 20s. And the big thing is because 20 could get so many buffs piled on it, they feel really good, which warriors pull off really well, dangerously so. But Sisters and Votann, I think, that's what I would fix more than points or anything.
I think that would actually help with how Votann doesn't really feel right to me. Having a solid, like, 20 model battle line.
That you can just park out there and have just this big unit with some special guns.
That sounds right. It sounds like that's what it should be doing. So, but then again, like, this is Votann. Guess what? You don't have all of your army yet.
Yeah, which is why we're able to talk about, like, literally every unit.
Yeah, I think they'll be fine.
All right, enough dwarves. Let's talk about some bugs. Something even shorter.
Yeah, let's move on to Tyranids. So their army rule is...
2 of them.
Technically 2 of them, yeah. We've got Synapse and Shadow in the Warp. I mean, Synapse... Again, I mean, it's this battle shock thing, man. I don't know.
Synapse is basically required because they gave them all bad leaderships and Synapse to counteract it.
Okay.
So if you get out of position, you're going to get battle shocked. You won't be able to use stratagems. You can't hold objectives. Tyranids is going to play pseudo-castly in small ways. Shadow in the Warp is weird because very few models can use it. So like you could have issues actually using Shadow in the Warp, but forcing a battle shock on every one of your opponent's units in either player's command phase, you can time it perfectly to try to screw up their objective game on like turn 3 and really screw up their game plan.
Yeah, so I didn't actually see that it was either person's.
Yes, which makes it much better.
Yeah, that could be really game-breaking.
Let's say they've got some units that have to take battle shock tests. You could make them do it twice. Hey, you passed the first one. How about the second? Oops, you lost your home objective.
Okay, I'm on board.
It's not super strong. It's very low power, to be honest, compared to some of the others. But it's going to be very swingy, and it's going to, I think, be a little trickier.
I mean, it at least has uses.
Now, the detachment rule is one of my least favorite things, but it's a lot less offensive.
I mean, I think it's just good.
It's fine. My problem is I always hate the, like, custom tailor against your opponent thing, and I think the precision one probably goes too far, even if it's only on crits.
Maybe, yeah. It is custom, but it's not like anything's particularly...
No, the lethal hits, sustained hits is like an all-in-one way for you to like tailor your list for like what you're going for.
Yeah, but it's also not like, oh my god, can't believe they've done that.
It's not to the Black Templars level. I think the precision one is a bit iffy. Whatever. It won't matter because I'm going to bet good money that you're not playing this detachment come October.
Kind of hope not, because
it's kind of boring.
I'm expecting to see more interesting things.
Yeah. Tyranids, if anything, have such a wide range of what they can do. I want to see those first slant detachments. I want to see, ooh, here's your Horde detachment for Hormagaunts. Here's a sweet shooty detachment so my Exocrines are dirty.
Yeah.
Hint, they're already dirty.
Yeah, I just think that this is fine for a start, but I want more unique things. But the stratagems are...
They're very fine. They're very middle of the road as far as the stratagems have gone. The Endless Swarm thing, I assume, is going to be in all the Horde detachments.
I like it. It's one of those that, like, out of all of them, like, the rest of them are... There's some generic stuff that you, like, whatever. I think Endless Swarm's just fun.
Yeah, enhancements is like adaptive biology, alien cunning are stupid good. Synaptic linchpin is probably not going to be used, and perfectly adapted is going to be a do you have points?
Yeah, I mean, alien cunning, that type of ability is strong, and yeah, adaptive biology is just like, take it, right?
Yeah, after your first wound is gone, you have a 4-up, feel no pain. The first wound, you still have a 5-up.
Yeah, right, you still have a 5-up, and that's wild. These are all fine, but the actual units now.
Points changed a lot of my opinions.
Yeah.
Exocrines look cracked. I loved them already. Carnifexes look amazing. I think Carnifex spam is going to be really fun. Monster Mash in general looks really fun. The Horror Specs looks amazing.
Monster Mash looks so damn fun.
The new artillery gaunts are not okay. They should not be that cost, and they still need to be FAQ'd to only affect one unit.
Fair.
Zoanthropes got nerfed to oblivion, but also became so cheap that they might actually be OP in a whole new way they've never been before. I loved the Trigon and the Mawloc until we saw how many points they were.
Yeah.
I do think Termagant Castle is a real thing.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot of stacking like auras and leading and stuff you can do in Nids. Nids is one of the only armies that I think has a large number of auras because so many of their leaders are monsters.
Right, okay. Fair enough.
And so you could just make a big gaunt carpet around like some dudes in the middle giving out a bunch of buffs who are already tanky, and the ones that are the worst could take adaptive biology. You could end up with a pretty solid castle.
That'd be cool. I mean, I'm a big fan of Gaunts going wild.
The Tyrannocyte is actually like a proper drop pod that seems very good. Hive Guard actually are kind of hilarious because Overwatch does not require line of sight.
So, Spore Mines.
They're luckily way too expensive, thank God.
Okay.
They realized that was a problem.
3 models, 50 points. Probably too much, right?
I almost wish they were 10 more points just to ensure you never took them over Gaunts. You still spawn them by using...
Biovore?
Yeah, the Biovore. The Biovore makes them. I think the Harpy or the Hive Crone or whatever, one of them makes the other one. The Sporocyst makes one. But you can make a list that makes a bunch of mines and it could be funny, but I don't think it's good, so I'm okay with it. It's only annoying when the correct way to play Tyranids is take 27 stupid spore mines.
I think it's one of those, like, if it's possible, but not good, that's where I want it.
Yes, if you're doing it for memes, I'm fine with it. If it's objectively correct, it's wrong.
Yes. And I was concerned. So I'm happy to have those concerns laid to rest. Because, like, even at 3 models at 50 with the rest of the list, I was like, I don't know.
I think Nids is a mixed bag, but generally good. I think they're probably upper half of the indexes, but the specific flavor you like might be out of fashion till October.
Definitely looking forward to the actual codex on this one.
Oh, there's one very stupid thing. Warriors without guns cost more than warriors with guns. This has to be accidental, right? There's no world where you would ever purposely pick one without a gun. You do it because you ran out of the slots for the ones with guns.
Sure.
It's so weird. Those point costs have to have been swapped on accident. They misread when typing them in.
It's possible, but I guess I don't care.
All right, that does it for Xenos then.
Yeah, it's chaos time.
Yeah, nothing's gonna jump out of a gutter and bite us or anything.
Nah, that doesn't sound right.
All right, so it's time for Cult Ambush.
Oh no. Genestealers.
We saved them for last, partly for meme purposes, of course, for unfunny jokes, as people with a podcast have to do. But I honestly think Genestealer Cults have, like, one of the absolute best indexes. I am super fucking hyped for it. It's so good.
So Army Rule.
Army Rule, fantastic. 10 out of 10. Great design. It is now up there with Miracle Dice for me on Don't Take This Away From Them. It's so flavorful and correct.
And it's good, too.
It would depend entirely on if the units were priced too much for it, but they're not.
Yeah, you're right. It's very flavorful. It feels right. And I mean, I think it's very strong. So I'm all aboard. Brood Brothers.
It's one of those soup things. It doesn't matter. It's probably wrong to do unless Astra Militarum has cracked units that are undercosted. Oops.
That's why I'm like, I don't know, man.
They don't ever get the Genestealer word. You're using them in a vacuum. You can't give them orders.
You can't give them orders, and that's probably why it's a bad idea.
I think it's still just a flavor thing. As long as it's not the best thing to do, it's fine.
Yeah. It's nice to have the option if you're just doing casual flavor stuff, but detachment rule, Ascension Day.
This is a really good index detachment.
Yeah. Ignores cover, huh?
Also, all weapons, not melee weapons.
Yeah.
You come out of Deep Strike, and all of your shooting has sustained hit ones, ignore cover.
That's pretty good. That doesn't seem balanced at all, honestly.
It's pretty solid. So, again, people will joke, but you're shooting Genestealer Cults, so it's real bad. But this is the army that I found the most things that seem to stack as buffs. Like, you could spend like 4 CP on a perfectly set up unit and end up with something that makes Sternguard veterans blush, and you're paying 8 points a model.
I mean, I don't hate the idea of having Genestealers do that type of play.
No, the clever setting up the perfect execution of like 5 things falling into place and getting a big wombo combo, that's what Genestealers is for. I'm good with that. I think Genestealers have nailed their target audience and will do them proud. They just seem so fun.
It's interesting that the enhancements have a lot of CP refund type thing.
Yeah, Guard, Genestealers, stuff like that seem to be you're going to get a bunch of CP because we expect you to spend a bunch of CP.
Yeah, like, you're going to need this.
Whereas the more elite ones tend to be, you generate at the normal rate, but you have a classic character model who makes something free and lets you use it twice instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in a Genestealer actual data sheets, Aberrants have a 4-up Feel No Pain. They do pay for it, unfortunately. They are more expensive now, but they look legit. I love the Abominant. I don't think he's probably correct to play, but I'm going to do it anyway. Ridge Runners kept Crossfire, which is super interesting, and Crossfire is an ability that stacks with everything else now because it gives an AP to anything that shoots.
Oh, interesting.
There's a bunch of wombo combo. Like, you can stack up a bunch of stuff in a perfect scenario. Your Acolytes can all take their Flamers, which is a perfect thing for a bunch of stuff to get AP and stuff on. I do think it's a little weird. Biophagus, I think, is better to take with, like, Metamorphs than with Aberrants, when I always assume he's, like, the Aberrant character. But I think you just take him with the Metamorphs and have the Aberrants take an Abominant, I guess.
Okay. I mean, interestingly, it seems like Genestealers are pretty resilient.
It depends. I'm pretty sure you're going to be running 80 Neophytes minimum.
Fair enough.
I think it's going to be just like Arks of Omen, where that is like the first thing you put in your army. And they die like crazy. But that's the point of the entire army ability, is you don't care.
Exactly. It feels like they're resilient because the army ability and then like the other things are actually reasonably tough.
They're tricky tough. Yeah, they all tend to be like T4 with a bad save, T3 with a bad save, but they have like random Feel No Pains or -1 to be hit or... So yeah, I really like the Genestealers right now. I think if you're playing Genestealer Cults, you are in for a good time for the beginning of 10th. And while I think quite a few Xenos armies made out really well, I do think I'd say Genestealer Cults made out the best.
I feel like the Italan Jackals, Scout 9, is going to be rather strong.
It is funny, they have an ability that would be like where you put your upside ability, but instead it's a nerf. It's like an FAQ, the Outrider gangs. You're like, ooh, what's this give me? And it's like, called ambush is very hard for them. Do not get gamey with this crap.
Yeah. Which is good.
It reads very much like we almost took this away from them, but you can keep it, but here's a limit.
Yeah. If they took it away, it would have been rather disappointing.
Yeah, to have something excluded from it, yeah.
Overall, Genestealers feels like it's going to play Genestealers like it's a finesse army. If you have the right positioning, if you have the right buff stacking, it's going to do well.
Alright, we are finally into Chaos. Let's start things off with Chaos Knights, because it should be pretty quick.
Chaos Knights, you say?
Harbingers of Dread.
Yeah, so we've got the army rule is this dread thing again, huh?
It's a lot less awful to deal with this time, though you are going to constantly have to measure 12 inches over and over again to see who's in the aura every single command phase, but whatever.
That is about the only real annoyance out of it, though, just because how Battle Shock works. It's a lot easier to figure out what's happening, kind of thing.
I do wonder how broken it was that they needed to put it to Battle Round 3 for Doom and Darkness. I feel like you could get rid of some of the complexity here by just saying these are 2 bullet point abilities. You have Despair and then Doom and Darkness, but I guess keeping it from turn 1-2 with any bad luck keeps you from like truly blowing your opponent off the board.
Yeah.
And Knights should be really tanky this edition, so I'm expecting they actually do stick around to turn 3 to take advantage now, as opposed to before where you'd have like half your Knights gone by turn 3.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it does another one of those, like, the longer you're in the presence kind of thing, the scarier it is. I'm not sure I rate this up with Imperial Knights.
No, it's not as good as Imperial Knights.
But I think this is still reasonably good.
We had what I consider to be one of the worst designed ones previously. This one is fine.
Yeah, so hopefully the detachment rule doesn't ruin that. So the detachment rule's got one of those starting strength kind of things as well, so...
And I think the detachment rule... I don't like the basic detachment for Chaos Knights. I think it's a fine default detachment, but it's not one that I would particularly play. It reminds me of House Corvus. I don't like going all in on Battle Shock stuff. I know it plays into our army rule, but I kind of wish I could just kind of like accept the army rule as a bonus and focus on other things.
I think it's a cool focus.
You go in all in. If you're playing against Dark Angels or Sonic OC Fanfic Crusader Black Templars, if you're playing against either of those, you're going to be in for a bad time with your army and detachment rules because you put all your eggs in one bad basket. If you're against a random army, this probably does really dirty things at times.
The biggest problem is, like, this is the index one. It would be a neat, like, let's go all in on it, but I chose this.
I agree, but I also wonder if people wouldn't choose it without being forced to try it first, and they really want to show off Battle Shock.
Fair enough.
I get why this would be the one you pick.
That's acceptable.
It has the most synergy with your army ability you're going to see, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah, I was like, we'll see. I mean, Battle Shock's new territory.
So, Chaos Knights also did not get the weird Imperial Knight thing where they got chassis locked for when they can take their enhancements. 100% good with that fact as a man who owns a Cerastus frame. And then stratagems are good. The only one that matters is we kept Diabolical Bulwark, also known as Rotate Evil Ion Shields.
Would have been hilarious if they had forgotten to give Chaos that one.
There's good ones in here, like Long Leash. Terror Shades is actually pretty decent. Makes me appreciate the Abominant more. I still don't like what they did with the Abominant, but I understand it more with Terror Shades. I will say the War Dogs are absolutely cracked.
Yeah.
The Executioner is very strong. It got a bunch of buffs compared to last edition. A lot of the other dogs are just very good. They always were. They're fine. They continue being fine. But the Brigand, the shooty dogs, the double guns.
Yes.
They naturally hit on 2s.
That's new.
If you target the closest unit with your attacks, you get an extra AP. You already have an AP. You already wound Marines on 3s, including Terminators. You already hit on 2s.
And you have a lot of attacks.
And you get a lot of DACA. Brigands are dirty. I don't know if they'll like beat out other options where it turns out split hitting is always better, whatever. But I will be running Brigands. Hint, I'm also the man who basically jumped out of my seat this morning when I found out despoilers don't have to pay points for their double gun loadout, and I am a huge slut for double Gatling cannons. Finally, we have been freed.
You were trying to push that nonsense.
We are no longer shackled by a 200-point tax to take a pair of guns. All the Questoris frames, were abhorrent frames. All of them went down in points, some of them considerably. They look cracked until you remember they were unplayable. There's a reason we all souped in Abaddon.
That is true. But just looking at like the Knight, like Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights, these are priced to sell.
They both get away with murder in the indexes. They are some of the best there is.
I don't think it's wrong either. Like,
if vehicle toughness actually means that knights are very hard to take down in practice games, they might have to go back up in points. But if they're functionally about as tough as they've always been, where you blow up a knight a turn on average in a good list, then they're probably at the right points where they are now with the buffs to their Questoris frames.
yeah, it's hard to tell. We'll see.
It is really nice that with the new point values, it's pretty easy to actually play 3 large knights and still get 8 full models. I kind of think the answer in Chaos is actually just War Dog spam still, and maybe take 1 or 2 knights.
It's almost always going to be the right choice until it's...
But that's why they had to come down so much. That's why it's all so weird.
It kind of has to be until it's just very obviously War Dogs are wrong, at which point they're going to be so bad that you just like can't use them, and then you're stuck with like, oh, okay, I guess I have a 1,700 point army or something ridiculous like that, you know, like. But so long as the actual knight frames are costed well enough to be worth it kind of thing, especially because if you're not able to destroy multiple per turn, then you're getting enough out of it kind of thing. But if that toughness doesn't give you that, then it doesn't really matter that the points went down, at which point you just need more War Dogs because you just need more things to force split fire.
I will say the Knight Tyrant is spicy. I don't think it's correct, but it's like, it's not an embarrassment anymore. And it can actually equip its own Warlord traits and relics like it always should have been in 9th. Because, you know, these are supposed to be the leader knights.
Yeah.
And for some reason, they were banned from all the Warlord traits and relics in 9th edition.
I still think that the fact that the Tyrant gives War Dogs benefit of cover is weird.
It's supposed to be that his ion shields are so big that it helps them.
Okay.
It is supposed to show, like, his ion shields cover other people.
That makes sense.
It's functionally useless, in my opinion, on a, like, normal board layout.
Absolutely. It's 6 inches from it.
I guess it helps if you have to play against Planet Bowling Ball or something.
I guess, but like positional awareness.
The way more important ability is the you can't deep strike within 12 of the Tyrant, meaning you can never deep strike charge him. That's big.
That is nice.
Anyway, let's move on to something with a little more meat on it. Let's do Chaos Space Marines. This is the one we're going to dread, so we might as well get it done with and then zoom through the rest.
Okay, so the army rule is Dark Pact.
It's fine.
I like it.
It's very CSM-y. I understand Iron Warrior players being mad and Night Lord players being mad because, like, they prefer this to be a detachment thing because they prefer to not be chaos CSM. They're renegades who don't bow to the gods.
Right.
I get that argument, but, like, it's just they have to make it not just be Space Marines with spikes.
Exactly. And the Dark Pact give the right feeling.
I will say their detachment is one of the ones that I expect post-Codex you will still pick. Because Slaves to Darkness is a decent detachment rule. It has interesting stratagems even if they're a little wonky. I like what they were trying with them. The only thing I hate is when we get to the enhancements.
I'm not a big fan of the detachment, but part of it's just because I don't like how it's been split up. Particularly the detachment rule having Khorne and Tzeentch lethal hits, Nurgle Slaanesh sustained hits. It's just weird.
I feel like Slaanesh and Khorne are in the right spot in this book, and the Demon Codex got it backwards.
Okay. Either way, it doesn't seem right. There's a disconnect between the two. Whether it's Chaos Space Marines is right or the Demons is right. Like, somebody's wrong.
The real thing is, like, they didn't want Nurgle to have stealth. They wanted to cut that off real quick. If we were trying to find the keyword that matches each of the 4, they would not all be equal.
And I get that. I accept that. But, like, it doesn't seem right. So, not that it's bad or anything like that, but okay. What's your problem with enhancements, though?
Read them. You only gotta get 3 words in.
Are you saying you don't like Eye of Tzeentch? You get 5 enhancements.
Yeah, you get 1 enhancement.
Yeah, there's 1 for each of the sections, essentially. Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, Slaanesh.
I read this one before I read Demons, and I was like, God damn it. We're only going to get like 5 of these things, aren't we? And I was wrong. Yeah, datasheet-wise, CSM actually looks very good. Honestly, a very fun mix of stuff. Point-wise, I didn't keep up too much. I saw that some people were upset with 1 or 2 things. Some people thought Noise Marines were too cheap.
Fuckers.
They're very cheap. I'll agree.
There's no such thing.
For the most part, I'm very happy with CSM stuff. You can basically play them just like with Space Marines, like, pick the stuff you like. It's probably B tier, right?
Okay.
That's kind of how I feel about it. Assuming you pick good loadouts. If you pick Havocs and give them all garbage guns, that's on you.
There's always ways to do it wrong, but a lot of it seems right, but I don't know enough about the points to really...
Without looking at points, all I want to do in life is play a gigantic blob of a cursed cultist and then give them the HQ of the 5 cultist characters, the Dark Commune, and then just buff them to Kingdom Come and play stupid cultist mutation mash. I don't know how good I can make it, but it's something in here and I want to do it.
That's fair.
And like, because that's like a thing you could do, that kind of shows like how much variety there is in here. You can play Demon Engine spam, although of the things I kept up on, why is Lord Disco so expensive? He is not very good now.
Yeah, I was like, hold on. I think Lord Disco's dead, isn't he?
He's really dead. The problem is they made the new totally not Tech Marine, whatever they're called.
Warpsmith?
Yes, Warpsmith. They made him have a new model, so they made the other Demon Engine HQ bad, so that you would go buy 3 of the new model.
Yeah.
They both buff the same units, so why make them both good? Welcome to a Space Marine faction. Enjoy your stay. I gotta say, Vashtor actually looks better than he did in 9th, so that's nice.
That is good.
I think overall CSM, like, it's hard to talk about specifics because there is a lot. It's just like with Space Marines where, like, I'm not sitting here and talking to 90 data sheets.
Right.
But there's a lot of good stuff in here. Corn Lord of Skulls is all you need in life. Go get yourself one.
I mean, solid investment. And also more noise Marines. So I guess, I don't know, let's just do demons.
Yeah.
So the army rules, Shadow of Chaos.
I think it's good. I think it's very situational and carried by how it's mutated by the datasheets and stratagems.
Which I actually kind of like, because what they do with demons is smash them all together. I like the idea of keep something kind of generic that we can play with based on how you're going to do stratagems and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think they went far enough to that point.
It's undivided. It has to be flavorless chaos, and like Shadow of Chaos is kind of the best you're going to get for that.
Yeah, probably.
The detachment rule is essentially, this looks very fun as long as you don't play Tzeentch. Guess which one I play?
Yeah, I guess it's not great for Siege. Okay.
It's really good for 3 out of 4, which is kind of why all 4 don't want to be together. Stratagems are pretty good for the most part. Actually, as much as I was joking about the like not for Tzeentch thing, Drought of Terror looks really good for Tzeentch.
Yeah, and they're good options to have that aren't forced into one section, which is good.
And of everything, Demonic Invulnerability, this is something that I know AOS players say is not okay. They took this out of AOS. This used to apparently be a thing.
Oh, really?
Reroll saves of 1 was a way to show you were hyper elite, like Custodes would have reroll saves of 1.
Okay.
And it's apparently very not okay balance-wise, and they gave it to us as a stratagem.
At 1 CP.
Mm-hmm. I have a feeling it's just like Armor of Contempt. You're going to spam it every turn.
It's only for shooting phase.
Sure, but like, we only have a 5-up for everyone but Tzeentch.
Right. It might be okay, but...
It might be okay specifically because we have bad saves. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to do the math. It's literally 1:30 in the morning.
But, yeah, you bring up valid concerns on that.
Speaking of valid concerns, welcome to the enhancements page. I was wrong when I was concerned about them only having 5 enhancements and only getting to use 1, because we only get 4 enhancements.
Yeah.
They didn't even give us an undivided one for if you wanted to take a Demon Prince or something.
Nope. I mean, for what they are...
No, fuck you. Don't even defend this shit.
No, they are, okay? Guess what? If you're playing Khorne one's fine.
The Khorne one's good, the Nurgle one's good. The Tzeentch one's kind of fucking awkward. The Slaanesh one is a toy.
Sounds right.
The awkward part is the Nurgle one goes right back into the they know this is Nurgle's shtick. They just won't give it to Nurgle. They'll give it to literally anybody else for free.
Yep.
But Nurgle's gotta get a relic for it and not play Death Guard.
It really doesn't make sense, but...
But Aberrant's it before I feel no pain, so fuck off.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, I mean, the enhancements, honestly, for what they are fine, but, like, you don't get options, so that's not fun.
Alright, so this is 4 armies of data sheets, so let's go through this differently.
Yeah.
Nurgle. I think you're going to be okay, but Nurglings and Plague Bearers are the worst part of your army, which is awkward because they're like your basic units.
So, are the Nurglings, like, actually bad?
Nurglings will follow kind of what they do in 9th. They are infiltrators. They have OC0. They can't capture points.
Right.
But they're infiltrators, meaning you can set them up to block off your opponent in their deployment zone, make them get past the Nurglings first. And they do have a bunch of wounds in T3.
And they're still reasonably cheap, so okay.
Yeah, and they're -1 to hit in melee, including they cause that for like literally everything. So in case they're around, they still get -1 to hit. Nurglings are interesting. They're kind of like a debuffer unit.
Which, I mean, it should still be useful, but not as like the core part of your battle line.
No, and Plaguebearer's thing is just being 2 wounds. Whatever. Beasts of Nurgle look great. Plague drones look okay. You might actually run your fortification, which has been on and off good over the couple of editions now. Great Unclean One and Rodicus both look pretty decent. That's about all you have. Slaanesh. If you enjoyed playing the early part of 9th edition with 3 Keepers of Secrets and Salaxi, you're going to enjoy playing 10th edition.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Also, the Seeker Chariots look stupid as hell. That ability ain't okay.
Yeah, that does look quite nice.
Yeah, let's charge in and do the old Devastating Wounds anti-infantry.
Yikes.
So yeah, Slaanesh is looking pretty damn good. Khorne, honestly, I joked before points that this is Codex Khorne and Friends. After points, who the hell priced Bloodletters at 16 points a model? They're 1 wound.
Yeah.
They only have a 5-up save. I think they're paying for the sins of the Renmaster, because when I read the Renmaster's ability, I was like, oh my god, this is so broken. If this costs 200 points, you still take him.
Yeah.
If he costs less than that, you take 3 at all times. The Bloodthrone ability, for those who don't know, is a unit in 18 visible to it until the end of phase for the fight phase. Khorne units that make an attack against that unit have a strength, an AP, and a damage.
It's not bad. 18 inches is huge, actually.
Yeah, it's like a normal psychic range for the most part.
Yeah. But that's not psychic. What the fuck, man?
And everything in this army deep strikes. So before Bloodletters were 16 points, I was like, this is insane. But now that they're that expensive, I'm like, I guess you play Blood Crushers?
Sure.
His buff is less important the less attacks you have, which is why it's not that important for the Bloodthirsters, but they look very good too. I just think Khorne in general is very good. Bloodletters look way overpriced unless I'm undervaluing them for some reason.
I don't think it's worth the amount, even as like a trade piece.
All right, so let's talk about the God of Magic and his 230-point models that cast 1 spell.
Oh, Lord of Change.
Oh, Kairos Fate Weaver. Both of them cast 1 spell.
Oh.
Kairos is a good model for unrelated reasons, but that's some bullshit. Lord of Change is a triple caster, I'll remind you. He's now a single caster. It's 1 good spell, but it's 1 spell.
Yeah.
And it still has all the downsides of becoming a gun. Don't worry, the shitty range on it can be improved if you take the relic.
Wow.
It also makes it all the way up to strength 10. Strength 12 all the way up if you count his own aura, and he's in the shadow in the warp area, which is the only anti-tank we're getting in this army. I'm extremely salty.
I don't even think you're wrong, though.
If you like Khorne, this codex looks great. If you like Slaanesh, this codex looks great. If you like Nurgle, at least you're better than Death Guard. If you like giant chickens, go fuck yourself.
I really feel like this is Slaanesh's.
No, this is Khorne's codex. Slaanesh has a broken data sheet.
Yeah.
Slaanesh might be fine still, especially after points, but Khorne has the most love put into that section. I'm being an ass about Lord of Change because it's literally like my favorite thing, and it's stupid how bad it is, but the rest of Tzeentch Demons, there's some tricks in here. I've got a little flamer trick I like. I actually think pink horrors look pretty good for their price, even though they look very expensive on paper.
I was gonna say, aren't the horrors like still fine?
They made blue horrors really bad because they were sick of people ignoring pink horrors.
Right.
Because blue horrors were like 70 points and bad, but everyone ran them because they wanted to run cheap stuff, and pink horrors were like 130 points, and they're like, fine. Pink horrors are 145 points, blue horrors are 130. Do the math. So yeah, I think pink horrors are actually pretty good now. Flamers are okay. I think screamers are still just terrible. I don't understand screamers, man. You've got the magic shooty faction. You give it a fast attacking melee trade piece that melee's bad and can't take a hit. What? Why are screamers in here other than they look creepy?
I mean, I think they look cool, so I'm not going to ignore that too much, but I do feel like there's supposed to be more to it.
They've always been like this, though. This is how they've looked since they took away, like, I know in, like, 6th or 7th edition, there was the Screamer Bombs, where you could have them be in a 2-up invulnerable save the whole game.
So they're still paying for those sins, huh?
I guess. It's been the entire time we've looked at this game for years now, and they're still looking like this. I will say this, Set Aflame is the coolest thing ever. That can stay. But whatever, Demons is not my favorite. Oh, and Be'lakor and Demon Princes exist. Oh, and we haven't talked about the Demon Prince issue in the room.
There's no issue.
You know how Wings are an upgrade, Eric?
Yeah.
Not this edition.
Really?
Wings is a separate sheet, and they took all the good stuff off it, so you have to play the non-winged one. They made it so bad, they even admitted this in the points by making winged demon princes cheaper than wingless ones.
Oh, that's hilarious.
They fucked them so bad in public and just made you pay for it. They're like, yeah, everyone on Earth puts wings on a demon prince because you'd be an idiot not to. Because A, it's the coolest looking thing ever, and B, it's the correct choice. So all we did was take every good ability off every winged demon prince and make it so you have to run wingless ones constantly. I guess there is the Winged Demon Prince of Khorne is actually pretty good as a character hunter thing, but that is like a single case in not every codex because, like, we'll get to Thousand Suns and Death Guard.
Yeah. Speaking of
Thousand Suns and Death Guard, let's do Death Guard first.
Let's do Death Guard first.
All right, we can move on. Let's do Thousand Suns.
That's about right. Okay, so Death Guard army rule is this, like, zone of contagion or whatever.
It is the worst army rule in the game.
It is, but I feel like it has a great potential that just wasn't taken advantage of.
Yeah, what you want is kind of how 9th edition handled it, where every detachment would make it do something different.
Right, and it's like, this is Nurgle's zone, and the detachment does something to that zone.
Yes, instead it's an stinky field.
Yeah.
And you can make objectives stinky by farting on them before you leave.
I hate the fact that I look at it and I see potential.
You see how it could have been good?
Yeah, could have been something to play around, both as, you know, like you designing your army list and having to deal with this new thing that's showing up that you have to play against, kind of. But no, it just doesn't matter. It's just an annoying logistics. Hey, remember this circle gets a little bit bigger. Nothing matters, but...
Then you've got your detachment rule, which is near zero.
Oh... Again, like, they're bad, but it could have been good.
I'm torn on it because Death Guard players see themselves the way Custodes players do in the Imperium. We're the one that doesn't die. GW seems to want that to be Custodes' shtick and for Death Guard to go find something else. To the point where when we get there, the cheapest Terminators are Death Guard Terminators because they're bad.
Yeah.
You got a discount rather than being up-pointed because you've got better Terminators than everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, you've got discussed the stratagem. You've still got disgusting
Yeah, I mean, Death Guard still does have disgustingly resilient. They just have to pay 2 CP per unit, and they can only choose to do it once.
Yeah, what you said.
I'm trying not to be down on these indexes and, like, try to figure them out. Death Guard, though, what are you doing?
It's one thing to have something that's just bad, but I see potential, and I hate the fact that potential exists and it's not particularly difficult to go to it, but they just didn't. And I think it's because, like you said, GW's just not actually embracing the fact that Nurgle Death Guard is supposed to be this, like, unkillable kind of thing.
Yes, they want to focus on the stinky.
Yeah, that's not fun. Sorry. And I can't imagine that there are many Death Guard players that would disagree with me on that.
I want to sell it as, like, they're supposed to be a debuff-based army, where you make your opponent look like crap. But, like, they've got the stinky aura, and then they don't follow it up.
It's just annoying, and it's not like this is the first time, either. 9th didn't do well.
Death Guard is on a real bad streak at this point. Don't worry, Eric, you can take your Death Guard Demon Prince, not with wings, and he can give you an aura of a 6-up Feel No Pain.
Wonderful. I hate seeing armies that fail to do what the people who play it want it to do. you know? The consuming plague that's just spreading rot.
That would be another way to do it. Okay, maybe they cause mortal wounds around them constantly, and you stack up that way. That's how AOS Nurgle works right now. They went away from the super tanky towards the AoE mortaling everything constantly. I do think there's basically two ways to play Death Guard right now. You can do Plague Marine Death Stars, which doesn't look terrible, or you can do just play as many vehicles as possible. That's how I would go about it.
Yeah. Let's move on to something more exciting. One of your armies, Thousand Sons, Psychic.
So, we already had the Psychic rant, and to be honest, they bribed Thousand Sons players because we kept Cabal of Sorcerers. Yeah, Cabal of Sorcerers is still very strong and basically lets us play with a pseudo-spell list, because we got to keep Doombolt, we got to keep a new version of Twist of Fate, Temporal Surge, Weaver of Fates. Echoes from the Warp looks good.
I mean, that all depends on the rest of the stratagems kind of thing.
Yes, and we do have very good stratagems. But I do think it's really hard to pass up Doombolts. It's pretty hard to pass up Twist of Fates too, but all the Cabal rituals are really good. It comes down to the fact that you're going to need a lot of Cabal points. Luckily, they totally fixed our ability and our problem with 9th edition of being 5 data sheets because anything that wasn't a Psyker didn't give Cabal points. Oh no, they didn't do that.
The Cabal points look great, but you still need a bunch of them to be able to do anything, so...
Look, the nice part about the index is you've already read it because you've read your codex. They did not stray far from Cabal points. They were like, that looked pretty good. I'm afraid to break it. Let's not change a fucking thing.
Yeah.
So we'll be playing the exact same list we played in 9th edition again.
I had problems with the way that it was done, but I think that for 10th, this is very good.
Thousand Sons is a small range. You always end up running the same list because you made the range even smaller. We're like Harlequin size. We're almost identical in size to them. Every bit of thought that went into a Thousand Sons list was about your spells. You made that all static.
That was like the coolest part of Thousand Sons. That's what I was always envious of.
I had 18 spells to pick from.
Super envious of that.
You could set up really complex characters where you want to set up like 3 different spells. You could try doing cool stuff with a relic and a spell combo. All sorts of fun. It's all gone. Your list is going to be start to finish every game the exact fucking same. You're not going to change it. I am worried about the longevity of the army from that. I am happy Cabal of Sorcerers keeps some of it.
You actually still have Psychic options. It's just not at list building, really.
I'm very concerned about the fact that Ahriman is like strictly better than every other option for 5 more points.
Why is that a problem?
Because it's a named epic hero character who I don't want to be taking in every single game, but I have to because I have 5 units.
Yeah, that's about right.
You sure aren't spending 200 points on a model that provides you 0 Cabal points when all of our army's power relies on you to have a bunch of Cabal points.
Very true.
They even took away the Chaos Spawn tricks. It made our Chaos Spawn very boring. The exactly 2 Chaos Spawn is very cruel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Thousand Sons was unique because instead of just using 1 for a back point, we would occasionally run 10 Chaos Spawn and 2 5-mans, buff them to holy hell, and chuck them into stuff, and it was fun. That trick's gone.
Yeah, I did not pay attention to that at all. You only get the option of 2.
There's one exception to the Cabal thing, and this is the FAQ that is definitely going to happen. You know Hellbrutes, that thing that isn't a Psyker in Thousand Sons, even though it should be because it's a Thousand Son? I know the deep lore, they're not really Thousand Sons. Fuck you, that's stupid as hell, and that's just an excuse to make them not Psykers, and you know it.
Sure, I'll accept that.
So, the Thousand Son Hellbrute, not a Psyker, thus gives no Cabal points. However, it has a little ability on it, Eric. Arcane Knowledge amidst babbling insanity. An aura. Each time a friendly Thousand Son Psyker model within 9 inches of this model is selected to use a ritual, you gain 1 Cabal point. That doesn't say 1 model with this ability. If you put 3 Hellbrutes into your list and put them all in your Psyker area, you get -3 Cabal points on the price of every single thing you use.
All right, then.
So we'll be running ×3 Hellbrutes until that gets FAQ'd, and then we'll be putting them back on the shelf.
I think that's pretty obviously not intended.
But at the same time, we're Thousand Sons player, and we have to have some spite here.
Yeah, I was like, but I fully support the idea of running that into the ground.
We will cause holy hell until you give us back our goddamn spells.
I mean, you've got great Terminators still, though.
The Sots are fantastic, although, again, it does my least favorite thing of your Sorcerer Lord guy would give 0 buffs if he wasn't a Psyker. He apparently never actually took military training. He just psychic powered his way through it.
I mean, if anybody would do it, Thousand Suns would have been the one to do that.
Mutalith Vortex Beast still continues to not give any Cabal points. Out of the entire codex, the only thing that doesn't have the word Psychic on it is Warp Vortex. The Mutalith Vortex Beast's giant ball of warp energy isn't Psychic now that Psychic is just a gun, even though it is literally a warp vortex, thus made of the warp.
I mean, it's a buff that it isn't.
It's actually not. You have to remember, we skipped over our detachment rule because I was so mad. We get buffs to all of our stuff that's Psychic.
Oh, yeah, you get the sustained hits and...
Sustained lethal or devastating wounds. Yeah, no, it would be better if it was Psychic in this army.
That's funny. That's, like, legitimately hilarious.
It's always bothered me that it wasn't a Psychic thing. I was like, just give me the Maleceptor's data sheet. They're the exact same size.
Very similar in feel, yeah.
They're both big Psychic monsters. Why is the Mutalith Vortex Beast not Psychic, but the Maleceptor is? But anyway, the Mutalith Vortex Beast actually has an ability this time that's pretty decent. It still angers me to no end from a Vorthro standpoint that the thing with the giant warp ball doesn't cost Psychic, and that it also doesn't give Cabal points when it's supposed to be the thing that makes you cast better.
I'm definitely looking forward to the when Thousand Suns Codex comes out and we get to think and reevaluate this one.
I think the index is very strong. My problems with it are problems I've had with 9th edition's Codex.
Right.
I still think this is good, but I have to have these rants because it's been bothering me this whole time and it continues to get fucked up.
I feel like you're saying this is good because you know what could have happened. And in comparison to the potential that was, this is awesome. Like, it's not bad. Definitely not bad. But let's move on to World Eaters.
World Eaters actually look very good. Very nice for World Eater players, other than the classic issue of you need 5 to 10 more models, including ones that you probably already own and got told you can't play with anymore.
And none of this helps?
No. So your army rule is very good. It's incredibly strong. It looks random. It is not. It's definitely not once you get into enhancements, but statistically incredibly strong army rule. It requires you to understand it a little bit, but yes, it is very obviously a Tzeentch mechanic that for some reason World Eaters got last second because Drukhari stole theirs.
Yeah.
It doesn't thematically match World Eaters at all.
Not at all.
The only thing that matches is Khorne's number is 8.
It doesn't make any sense, and I don't like it. It's not that I want World Eaters Khorne to be simple and unga bunga smash, but I don't want this.
Well, on the plus side, the detachment rule's easy. We already read Blood Angels. The stratagems have fantastic names. 2 of them should have been swapped, but that's a different thing.
Oh, like...
The effect and the name are terrible, but they're fine stratagems. So when we get to enhancements, Favorite of Khorne is essentially just required. Your army rule becomes so consistent, it's disgusting. I'm not going to whip out the napkin math for it, but know that you were moderately reliable to get anything you wanted on that table without Favorite of Khorne. With Favorite of Khorne, you can be mad on turns where you don't have the exact rule you want.
Right, that's fair.
And your other enhancements are good, but that one is like super required if you were going to play this. It's reroll all your dice after you read the results.
Yeah, but it doesn't count as reroll, and you can still do other things to it.
Yeah, it's busted in every way it could be busted.
Yeah, okay. That makes more sense. I'm like, you're right. Statistically, you should be able to get whatever you want.
I don't even think we've mentioned the other Primars, but Angron's very good. Lord Invocatus, or whatever his name is, finally doesn't fly on his stupid pig. That's nice. They didn't do that stupid thing anymore.
You hated that so much, dude.
It's a pig on the ground that looks the exact same. You literally swap the guy's head for a different head or whatever, and suddenly the pig is flying.
It's hilarious how much that's bugged you for so long.
On the plus side, the World Eater Index is about as long as the World Eater Codex. I don't think you lost a page.
Might have actually had more content, because not as many, like, picture pages.
Jackals actually look really good. Basically, every unit looks fun, barring points, and points is the most fixable thing in any army. So it's like a I'm okay if something's overcosted temporarily and gets fixed later. Everything here looks fun. The only thing I'll say is, again, it's a very anemic range. It's like they half launched it because they had to get it out before 10th started. I don't even know why you can't run like your bikers or your raptors anymore, things that you could run until you got the codex. The only reason I would think they would take them away is they're giving you an exclusive version. And it's like, okay, where's that at?
Yeah.
But as things stand right now, I'll give them the rest of the edition for whatever manufacturing issues they had that held up the other half of this range.
That's fair. I don't. I think it's fucking bullshit. And I think it's going to be absolutely hilarious when Votann gets more of their range before World Eaters gets shit that they had back.
I expect that will be the case no matter what.
Yeah, what we have seems good. Like, what we see here with World Eaters seems fine. But, like, if you weren't ready for the actual release, if you weren't ready to have the actual models and finish the army, why did you release it?
It's more funny because, like, looking at the detachment, this has almost as many rules as the actual codex did. And I'm just thinking of, like, what else would you do? What are your other core detachments? You have no models to slant towards. There's nothing you can point them towards. This is the Blood Angel detachment. What are we doing? So I don't think Khorne needs a codex this edition because they're not going to get anything else. If they get the rest of their range, they can get a codex to go with it. That said, again, what's there is very good. So, like, if you're okay with just playing 8-bound and Berserkers and Jackals, you're going to have a ton of fun.
I do think 8-bound are going to be fun.
I think I like the idea of spamming more Berserkers than anything, but I don't know. I'm not really a good Khorne guy. I like Khorne Demons, but that's mostly because the Bloodthirster is dope as hell.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at, like, the 8-bound stat line, Scout 6, and it's just, I feel like that's going to be fun.
You really like Scout, man.
On things like this, yes, absolutely.
It's fair. It means you don't have to buy, like, a Land Raider to move them.
Exactly. Like, Scout 6, move 9. Come on, man. Let's go.
All right. It is officially after 2 in the morning. We have gone off the deep end hours ago. I don't know how much of this is making the final cut, but we've been here for well over 5 hours, almost 6 hours. So whatever made the final cut, you can tell how much Borrelio had to cut of us rambling. Hopefully you all enjoyed this. If you're still here after everything that we have said, boy, I hope you're subscribed on YouTube.
Also, thank you for sticking around. I appreciate you.
All right, but let's get out of here.